As excited as I am to do this commentary, people, this first time watch commentary, I was a little hesitant earlier today because I had to ask myself, do you want to watch this first and then maybe, review it, give some thoughts on it, questions, comments, concerns after the fact? Or do you still want to go through with it and do a full length commentary and capture, the reactions in the moment? And I said, yeah, man, I'm going to go with the latter because I I've actually, I can't say I've been waiting on this documentary. Actually, I have. I'm not going to say I haven't. I've been waiting on this documentary since they announced that it was going to happen. But before I knew there was a documentary coming, I've always been curious about what George A. Romero was going to do exactly with a Resident Evil property, man, because for better or worse, we've gotten a lot of Resident Evil adaptations. We've gotten animation, we've gotten 3D animation, we've gotten TV shows, we've gotten movies, but for the most part, the live action movies, I think we all can be in agreement when we say that nobody's really captured Resident Evil properly on screen. It's been through a shit ton of different directors. You had Paul W.S. Anderson who brought us the first live action Resident Evil, and I like that Resident Evil movie a lot. I think that one, with the exception of one we'll get into in a second, that one at least tries to really take itself seriously and tries to take the horror seriously and handles the horror elements pretty well for the most part. I think the first Resident Evil has the best scariest zombies in it for the most part because it's got those George A. Romero-esque zombies that just slowly move, they shamble around, and they close in on you slowly but surely. When they take you down, they're going to take you down and take their time. So the first Resident Evil, I believe that was like 2001 to 2002 at the latest when that came out. Man, I got a lot of appreciation for that. But Alexander Witt, stepped in the driver's seat for Resident Evil Apocalypse. And Paul W.S. Anderson was still on board as like a producer, executive producer. He was still writing and overseeing the projects. But Alexander Witt, with the second Resident Evil movie, man, they introduced Jill Valentine and Carlos Oliveira. They had cool characters in there, whether they were not comic book, but video game accurate or not. I think Jill's was pretty fucking spot on. It was the version of Jill we saw in Resident Evil 3. And fuck Resident Evil 3 because once Nemesis just kept mutating, I just gave up, man. I'm just not going to deal with you and your BS. But the problem that I got with Resident Evil Apocalypse, it's fun, it's cool. Nemesis, as practical and stiff as he is practical nonetheless, man, and he is very spot on from the games. At least the first time we see him before he starts mutating, he's pretty cool. But it's something about that editing that just gets under my skin, man. I don't know who the editor was, but I know Alexander Witt. It was pretty tame, man. I thought we were going to up the ante. Now, granted, it is a combination of Resident Evil 2 and 3 in one movie, but I just think it was something about how tame it was. They just could have went a little bit crazier with the violence, but they decided not to. Then you get Resident Evil Extinction, still the best in the franchise for me. Post-apocalyptic, end of the world type of shit. And Russell Mulcahy, the guy that did Highlander, directed that. And I think he did a good job, man. I think that movie's pretty well paced. I think the action is great. I think the zombies, the fact that all the zombies are wearing the same outfits in that desert sequence or in that Vegas sequence, that was kind of like a throwback to the first video game. There's cool characters in that one. You get the Tyrant, the original Tyrant from the original game, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of that movie. It's the best in the franchise, man. It's just the most badass overall. And I think Russell Mulcahy did a pretty good job, but I always say that Paul W.S. Anderson, now this is just my theory, man, and I'm sticking to it. I think he was pretty intimidated by how solid Resident Evil Extinction was by way of that director. So Paul W.S. Anderson stepped back into the fold for Resident Evil Afterlife, and we got, it's like I said before, I think when I did the commentary, man, we got some really great paced action in part 3, and then in Afterlife, everything slowed down and looked like the Matrix, and it was all shiny. We went from post-apocalyptic to not as post-apocalyptic and very shiny, clean, crystal, zestfully clean future with zombies. I don't know, man. It's got a pretty cool sequence with Alice and Claire and the Axeman. That is the slow motion sequence that I think is pretty cool. But I don't know, man. It was just really watered down, man, and it was very music video Matrix type of shit, man. Paul W.S. Anderson came back to do Resident Evil Retribution. I think that might be my second favorite. This whole franchise is guilty pleasure overall, but I love just how how much that movie didn't give a fuck. We're going to throw in Ada Wong. We're going to throw in Barry Burton, played by Kevin Durant, underrated actor, man. But, we're going to throw in two Michelle Rodriguez characters, and we're going to bring Colin Salmons back, and we're going to bring Oded Ferris Carlos back. The liquor is going to be 20 times bigger than it was, man. It was just a crazy, insane film. Then you get to Resident Evil, the final chapter. Trash. The look of it is amazing. Just how badass post-apocalyptic we went back to. But the movie's garbage. Some of the worst editing I've ever seen. And then you got Johannes Roberts, who stepped in for Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. Very good horror elements in there. Arguably the best in the franchise, but the movie just felt very cheap. They didn't give him a chance to, they didn't give him the money he needed to pull off a movie that he was trying to keep true to the video games. We had that Netflix TV series, Resident Evil. Trash. Rest in peace, shout out to, God damn, what was that actor's name? Is it Lance Reddick, the guy who played Black Wesker? Amazing actor, but that Black Wesker was a terrible idea, man. I hated that what they did with that. The TV show, I just gave up on it at some point, so I don't know if it played out well or not. But that Black Wesker shit, like everybody that said he was looking like Blade cosplay was absolutely spot on with that. But now we got the biggest what could have been situation with this documentary here, George A. Romero's Resident Evil. A documentary. It literally says that, but I should have saved the document. Like, y'all know what I'm saying, man. It's a documentary, damn it. And I just feel like I need to do this. This is something I need to do, and it's going to be bittersweet for me, because to know me is to know that George A. Romero is the greatest director, writer of all time for me. And Quentin Tarantino's up there too as far as writing goes, but George A. Romero gave me Night of the Living Dead as a child, and Night of the Living Dead changed my life to the point where I just snapped back into reality at that moment of escapism, and I was like, wow, I definitely was born to be a writer. I could do this. I could do a movie like this. I could write something like this. I could maybe possibly direct something like this. That movie, it is the motivational, inspirational movie for me, man. Ever since I was a child, never get tired of watching it. And obviously George A. Romero went on to do Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Diary Survival. And while the movies, I feel like character-wise and writing-wise, they do decrease in value as they go along, George A. Romero is solely responsible for creating the zombie genre, man. You had like zombie movies that kind of tap danced on the voodoo aspect of things prior to this, and some other stuff. But George A. Romero was the one that kind of set the rules in motion, man. He set what would become the modern day cliches in motion, man. And I don't, as much as it wasn't a cliche back then, so many people have ripped off George A. Romero, just blatantly plagiarized from George A. Romero. There's been so many imitations of Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead. Day of the Dead has spawned multiple reboots and a TV show, for God's sakes, man. George A. Romero, hands down, when it comes to the genre, but the zombie genre in particular, he is one of the trendsetters, man. He's one of the most imitated and inspiring figures that there ever was, man. And I felt as though like I owe it to myself to do commentary for this documentary, man, because I haven't read the script online that's floating around for Resident Evil, but I've seen little hints of what he was going to do, and he was going to include the STARS members, he was going to include the spiders and the snakes, and this is from what I've heard, man, and from some of the articles I've read, there was a lot of shit that he was going to bring forward to this movie from the games, man, and everybody's saying he really had a good grasp and an understanding on what fans were going to enjoy about a live action Resident Evil adaptation, man. And it just really sucks that he didn't get a chance to bring this vision to light, man, before he checked out. And like, I don't know, man, it's something, I'm not gonna say him in the mainstream, him and Hollywood were beefing, but I just don't think they really understood the shit that he was trying to do on screen and the shit that he was trying to say. Because if there's anybody who really understood how to do social commentary in horror movies, it was George A. Romero, man. I mean, Night, Dawn, and Day, and even Land of the Dead are definitely social commentary heavy. And even Diary of the Dead, man, as much as I don't like that movie, as much as that movie did wrong, it is definitely reflective on society today. Even at the time they made it, it still holds up with its message for the most part, man. So I feel like we're almost 10 minutes into this, people, and I'm rambling on. Obviously, anybody that sits 10 minutes into this intro, y'all must know that I'm a diehard George A. Romero fan. And honestly, George A. Romero has done movies that I don't like. I am a fan enough to, I'm a fan, not a fanboy. I always got to separate the two. I'm a fan because I appreciate this guy so much to know when his movies or his ideas could have been better. You know, I think fanboys will just accept anything and be like, yeah, man, this movie, all his stuff is amazing. Nah, and the funny thing about George A. Romero, I think Knight Riders is one of his most interesting, underrated films that he's done. And that has nothing to do with horror, has nothing to do with zombies, monsters, creatures, or whatever the case may be. If you haven't seen Knight Riders, I think it's on Tubi, man. I would definitely check it out. It's a weird one, but it's definitely interesting. Now, this documentary, man, this was directed by Brandon Salisbury, man. I don't know who this guy is, but let me see what other direction he's done here. Oh, this was his debut. And he's got something coming out called Faith, the Unholy Trinity, which he directed. But this is his directorial debut as a as a whatever I just said he was, a director, right? And it was also co-written by Brandon Salisbury and Robbie McGregor. But people, I don't want to waste any more of y'all time. If y'all stuck around through this intro, then hopefully y'all stick around through the commentary. But I definitely appreciate y'all. Now, this is on digital for anybody that wants to tune into it, man. And that's just in case y'all are tuning in. And y'all know if y'all are tuning in, y'all are the true To The Reviews MVP. So, people, I'm excited. I'm a little nervous. This is going to be bittersweet, as I said, man. But I need to know what happened, what went right, and what went wrong ultimately that we didn't get George A. Romero's Resident Evil, people. So let's get into this documentary. Let's hit the play button in 3, 2, 1. Tall cup of coffee this morning, by the way. I mean, it's afternoon now, but it's definitely, it has kicked in. It has arrived, people, for all the right reasons. Key 13 Films. That's a dope logo. Knights of the Dead. I feel like that should be a movie too. The views and opinions expressed in the interviews and commentary. So every time I try to read the damn captions that pop up, they give you 5 seconds and then they take it down. Is this the Spencer Mansion that we started off with? This film contains scenes of explicit violence and gore. Yes, as it should. Yes. Was that the Spencer Mansion steps, or am I just reaching already? Am I too excited? I don't know, people.
A bizarre incident had occurred near the end of the 20th century. A German production company called Constantin Film had purchased the rights to a best-selling video game created by Capcom with legendary director George A. Romero.
Oh, so he was going to do this movie when it was still under Constantine Film.
He was fired from the production. The case was apparently closed with the release of a feature film in 2002 directed by Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yeah, I said that.
But questions regarding Romero's unrealized film and his removal were far from answered.
Never knew he was fired. Straight bullshit. Like, how dare you? Like, you should be so lucky that George A. Romero would want to direct a Resident Evil movie. I think he did direct a commercial for, I think, Resident Evil 2. But, you know, it's the highest honor to get him to direct a Resident Evil movie. And y'all fired him? Yeah, we gotta figure out what happened. Oh, that's the dog from the cutscene of the first game. That dog fucked Joseph up. It looked more like a werewolf and not so much a dog. Is this Wesker in the woods? Because he's got the sunglasses. Is that the mansion? I got the stupidest fucking smile on my face right now. Doesn't necessarily look like a mansion though. But honestly, in the game, the Spencer Mansion, when they show it, like when it goes from cutscene to video game, and they do a close-up on that front door, that is, it gets bigger as you go inside of it. It's like the fucking People Under the Stairs house. Bro, you didn't hear that dog behind you? Wait, who is this? I know it's a STARS member, but the sunglasses give me Wesker, but the hair,
A In 1968,
Okay.
Image 10 unleashed a visceral experience upon the world that shocked audiences everywhere.
Night
Of the living, that dude, one of the greatest announcers in a trailer ever. Of living flesh.
The dead whose haunted souls hunt.
Bill Hinsman, Dwayne
The
Jones,
living whose bodies are
R.I.P.
food for these ungodly creatures.
George Andrew Romero was born in February of 1940 in Bronx, in New York. His father was a graphic designer, and he used to make posters for films and for Broadway shows.
Wow, tell me
banners and the
something.
like that. So when George was growing up, he was really in a household that kind of celebrated film.
He was one that took that love of film and actually acted on it.
He was born to do it.
I just want to
That's
grow up and be a
amazing.
filmmaker. He started making his films at an early age, and the famous story of throwing the flaming dummy off the building and getting arrested at a young age.
George came to Pittsburgh to attend what was then
That's
called Carnegie
amazing.
Tech, Carnegie Mellon.
Oh, this is going to be
he
so
came here
much
be
new
an
news to
student.
me, man.
Came, started taking his art classes, and eventually kind of got rolled in with some folks in the drama department, started doing theater, and eventually they kind of got swept up in, sort of emerging television.
The fuck is it?
Eventually they knew of this crew with Latent Image, which was sort of the company that they had put together. So you have George and Russ Streiner and Jack Russo and a couple of the Ritchie folks, kind of all together working to figure out how they can kind of navigate this space. And eventually the idea came to make a horror film, that it'd be easier to get funding for, it'd be cheap, they didn't need a lot of skills, they could kind of pull this off. And they had a script that was adapted by Jack Russo. He had written this, Night of Anubis.
That definitely was the
which
original
played
title.
out, but it was this general story that we know as Night of the Living Dead.
Imagine if that title, Night of Anubis, would have stuck, though.
There was an aspect of it that was very surreal and sort of dreamlike. I remember when the character Ben is clubbing the zombies, and like the way he's hitting them and the way the sound effects are kind of off sync a bit, and it's just kind of strange.
Yeah.
It feels like you're watching it, you're just slipping into some kind of nightmare.
They really learned how to make a film.
That was a
together,
great explanation, too.
Organically. I think
I feel like
fans know that George
like if
Martin
you're
Film School,
enough of a
neither did
geek,
any of the
you
other folks in
definitely
Light Image. They took their
see
video
how sound
production,
effects sync up and how they don't
from television and applied it
in that movie
and
and other
sort of
movies.
in a different way and on their own.
Some of the ways the characters speak are a little funny. They're coming to get you, Barbara. It's kind of funny, but then it gives you a sucker punch and scares the shit out of you.
And it's like Roger Ebert's original review of Night of the Living Dead. He said these kids were dropped off at a matinee thinking they're going to see some spooky Vincent Price movie, and of course they're eating livers and stuff, and these kids were like in shock.
There's a pretty safe scene where there shouldn't be anything of menace, but then all of a sudden this zombie comes out for no reason and starts killing
Yo,
one
Bill
of the
Hinsman.
characters, and you
I wonder what his
like,
direction
wow,
was, or did he
what's
tell
going
Judith
on?
O'Day,
I wound up
like, yeah, I'm going to choke the
going
shit
to
out you,
Sheen
okay?
Theater and watching Night of the Living Dead, and the dead
This
are
guy,
alive
Pat
with the living.
Jan
The weird thing is they
I'm
made
sorry.
references to all these other
Fucked his
places
last
that
name
my
up. I've seen him in
family
plenty of
would camp in when
documentaries.
we go to Pittsburgh. So it was utterly terrifying.
I love that I can't tell if Night of the Living Dead is an old or a modern film. It just kind of splits two eras down the middle.
Right.
I'm 14 years old, and they're having a convention in Monroeville, and I see George Romero,
Oh, that's
director of Night of the
where the
Living
mall
Dead,
was at.
there. And I was like,
In Dawn of
all
the
right,
Dead.
I want to go meet this psychopath that would make a movie that would give somebody nightmares like this. Met George, got an autograph from George, realized George was one of the nicest people on the planet. And then this 14-year-old, cornered George Romero, and literally cornered him in the hotel and was asking him question after question after question. And finally, he just writes on a piece of paper 247 Fort Pitt Boulevard, the address, and goes, "Here, write me."
Wow.
Then it was just, we became pen pals, and I still have those letters.
Damn.
Just remember
That's amazing.
the immediate
At first I was about to be like, yeah, that's harassment,
the
but
sequence of which the
George
zombies
Romero
felt
was
like
like,
you were
look,
under a constant sense
throw you a
of
bone.
terror and foreboding.
There were no R-rated movies before Night of the Living Dead, and Night of the Living Dead, of course, has no rating.
Until the Supreme Court establishes clear-cut guidelines for the pornography of violence, Night of the Living Dead will serve nicely as an outer limit definition by example. In a mere 90 minutes, this horror film, pun intended, casts serious aspersions on the integrity and social responsibility of its Pittsburgh-based makers, distributor Walter Reed, the film industry as a whole, and exhibitors who book the picture, as well as raising serious doubts about the future.
I love as they're reading this and they're showing the words. It's you can hear the pages turn and the captions just keep turning along with it. It sounds like the Resident Evil game.
People being burned with
I didn't even put that together at
Vietnam
like at first sight, but I was like, wait, that sounds it looks familiar.
We're not that horrific because what you saw.
It's a nice touch, man.
Was a lot more frightening.
And I love how they're showing the interview clips and the movie clips through that old school TV. Vintage, man. Oh, Barbara. Jesus. What was everybody's first reaction when y'all saw Karen stab her mother to death?
One of the most memorable scenes is when the truck is burning and there's flames flying everywhere and somebody's taking a piece of flesh and gnawing on it. We hadn't seen anything like that on camera.
After Night of the Living Dead, the definition of zombie would change.
Yep.
No longer inspired by misconstrued Haitian folklore, the zombie would now be your neighbors, your friends, your family, the reanimated corpses of the recently dead, seeking flesh.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
One of the greatest lines of all
could
time.
only be stopped by destroying the brain.
Beat them or burn them.
Of course, it famously set the rules for zombie film, how zombies work, how the brain is the zombie. You shoot the brain, you kill it, and that's been the common trope ever since.
Oh my God! I didn't even see that. To the right of the, you know how I said that they've got
in Pittsburgh. In fact,
you know
some
of the
because of
interview clips and the movie clips being shown on this small throwback TV.
Film of all time.
There is a red
Romero
herb
attempts to branch out into other
right
genres
to
were
the
met with
right
less enthusiastic
of the
results.
screen.
So in
From Resident Evil, I did not
1978,
see that. I saw the gun to the left, and I was like, all right, maybe somebody left it there. But the red herb, I didn't. Yo, I love it.
Turning them into violent psychopaths. And Martin.
My name is Martin. I'm 84
Yo,
years old.
The 1977 classic about a serial killer. That
I hate to
believed
say it,
he
but
was a
I don't.
vampire, but it was.
I don't
his
remember
next
much
film
of Martin
that
at
cemented
all,
George
and I've never
Romero
seen the
in
crazies.
mind
As
of
big a George A. Romero
worldwide.
fanatic as I am, I gotta admit that. I was just watching the Crazies last night, the remake, but I've never seen more than like 5 minutes of that original movie. The first 5 minutes. And Martin, I just don't remember none of it.
Filmed at the Monroeville Mall near Pittsburgh.
Jesus, that mall
1978 film
looks
became an instant
unrecognizable,
hit, and
yo.
the mall itself became a monument for Romero fans to visit in the decades to follow.
The movie opened up and they knew right away that they were sitting on a big hit film. Dawn of the Dead really turned Romero's career around, and it was a massive hit. It was released unrated because they were afraid
another
to get an
film
X rating.
that revolutionized the genre.
In 1977, when Tom Savini asked me to do a role in Dawn of the Dead, we did the makeup, head castings, and when I got onto the set at the little Harold Brown Airport, the Monroeville Airport, that's when I first got to see and meet George. And he was in the middle of directing, but I could tell just by the way he moved. And sometimes you go by your first impression.
This guy talking
And
right here,
that
he
first
looks like the
impression
guy that's in that
was
commercial.
solid in terms
Look,
of-
if you hate cops
he was,
just because they're
very
cops,
gregarious.
the next time you're in trouble,
was very
call a
friendly.
crackhead. He looks
was
just
very-
like that guy.
Open and receptive.
It might be
and
that
at
guy.
the same time, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. If somebody had a slightly better idea, well, let's hear it. Maybe we can bring that in.
When he was shooting, it was important to him to create a family atmosphere. In the years before I knew him, when he was partnered with Richard Rubinstein, they shot in Pittsburgh with a crew drawn partly from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Everyone knew and liked everyone else,
Mr.
and worked
Rogers.
together well. Although I suspect the language on George's set was a little more profane than on Fred Rogers. At least it was when we made Monkey Shines, which turned out to be...
Monkey Shines I've never seen before. And I'm like, listen, George A. Romero fan or not, I'm okay with that. I'm not about to watch a movie like, Dunstan checks in and all that type of shit with monkeys, apes, orangutans, whatever. But
Everything in one
a
take.
killer monkey?
George was
No,
smiling,
we're not doing that.
hey,
I can't do it.
This was just great.
I discovered George Romero through my brother Tasso, who was going to Carnegie Mellon University with Tom Savini.
Oh, that's
who was
Tasso's
just
brother?
becoming
Tasso is
sort of
Tom
known
Savini's
as
like
makeup effects.
partner in crime as far as
So he got a
makeup
film with
effects
George
go.
called Martin. And then Tasso worked with him on Dawn of the Dead.
Such
They
a
both did
family
lot of
affair, man. That is
stunts
amazing.
And acrobatics and stage combat at CMU, and so they became the stuntmen on Dawn of the Dead.
Yep.
In addition to
That's
combat
Tasso
and
right
makeup
there
effects.
that just
So,
got shot off
Tasso
that
plays
car.
several zombies and also gets killed. But as a kid, this is like really like impressive shit. Like, your brother's in a movie. He's on the magic side of the screen now. I grew up steeped in that. So that was my holy trinity: was Tasso, Tom, and George.
I got to meet George again
Rightfully so.
at a place in Pittsburgh called the Pittsburgh Mattress Factory. They showed Night. Afterwards, there was questions, and George was George. He would come through the front door. There was no special treatments. There was no anything like that. And I'm just like, I can't remember. My mother's standing behind me, and she goes, he makes movies too.
Huh.
She just told George Romero that I make movies. And
what
so
happened?
with just stupidity, I went, oh, and smashed my face into the brick wall by accident. And after he checked on me, he goes, what I want you to do is write down all your questions, come down to the office, and spend an afternoon with me.
Whoa.
I had my list of questions.
Oh my.
I sat down in George Romero's office.
Imagine, yo.
And spent the afternoon, and he answered all my questions.
What?
And when it was done, he goes, I'm making this movie about these knights that
Night
ride
Riders, people, I was
Love
just
you
talking
for
about
you
it.
to be my apprentice. Yes, absolutely. And so, did he inspire me? Oh, hell yes, he inspired
Of course. Could
Romero
y'all
returned
imagine?
again for a third, and at that time,
Oh.
final entry in this Living Dead series with the 1985 film Day of the Dead.
It was that tongue
On
zombie.
my 21st
Blech.
birthday, I got into the different scene, and we ended up killing Rhodes. I remember George looked at me, and I go, hey, it's my 21st birthday. And he's like, why are you here? And I'm like, where else would I want to be?
Exactly.
This is the greatest birthday ever. Because I hung out with Tom Savini and all them, and they trusted me with some stuff, so they put a blood pump on my back, had it running down my arm, and I had Joe Pilata's legs. And so I pumped blood while we were dragging him.
I would have spent
The
any
intestines
birthday on the set of Day of the
were
Dead.
refrigerated because someone had
Or any
killed my
zombie
father.
movie with George A. Romero and crew. Rhodes, recipe
They
shout
were
out to
just,
Joe Pilato. One of the
smell
greatest,
is
most
exactly
satisfying
what
deaths in
everyone
any zombie
says.
movie.
And when it was awful.
You're crazy.
Romero's films frequently placed the zombie concept into a larger context within the narrative. Night of the Living Dead was a story about a group of strangers surviving the night in a farmhouse assaulted by ravenous ghouls. But
Yeah,
beneath the surface
that's the gist
boiled
of it.
social commentary on the civil rights movement and the treatment of African Americans in American society.
You can be the boss down there. I'm boss up here. Bastards.
Carl
Really
Hardman was
strong
great,
black character,
but
then is just
how
killed
how
by
great
the
was Dwayne
vigilante
Jones?
hunters at the end.
All right, Vince, hit him in the head, right between the eyes.
Oh, God.
It was part of that zeitgeist to understand.
Good shot.
That ending, man.
Okay, he's dead. Let's go get him. That's another one for the fire.
There was this sort of racial commentary that was going through in reflection of the turmoil of the 60s.
Dawn of the Dead focused on overconsumerism, greed, and America's fascination with materialism. Later films would challenge sexism, class warfare, the war on terror,
We don't negotiate with terrorists.
tribalism,
Rest in peace. Shout out Dennis Hopper, Kaufman,
and detached
Crazy
voyeurism
villain.
while witnessing acts of
kind of
violence.
reminiscent of
Inoculated.
the
These core
ongoing
concepts
presidency
made George
right now.
Romero's films feel raw, relatable, and real. That we could be these characters in that very same predicament.
I think George touched on a lot of universal themes with his movies, and I think that's why so many people were able to relate to them. Because it was the everyman. I mean, you would see the military and you would see other people that we weren't, used to seeing in our everyday lives, but he really focused on real people caught in real situations.
I think that is his biggest social critique, was that he just didn't have a lot of faith that humans could put aside their differences and work together when they really
You know what I just realized? That guy, Michael
All zombie
Felcher, that was
media
just
after
talking,
Night of the Living Dead.
that
With a
motherfucker
debt of
definitely left me
gratitude
on
for the
red
work
on
that Image
Facebook.
10
I've tried to
and
interview
Horror
him,
and with
or at
that
least make a proposition to get him on the show, and he just read the message and never responded, man. And I was kind of inspired because I was listening to, he did a commentary for Friday the 13th Part 5. It was him, Danny Steinman, Shavar Ross, John Shepard, and he did a commentary for Demon Knight with Ernest Dickerson, which is actually celebrating its anniversary today. Look at the graphics on these old Resident Evil games, man. Like, this was love back when we were kids, man.
Part of that success came from an immersive experience where players felt like protagonists in a horror film. Not surprisingly, its inspirations
Cutscenes were pretty good at the time, man. I'm not gonna lie.
In 1993, a senior producer at Capcom, Tokuro Fujiwara, desired to remake a video game he directed 4 years earlier for the Nintendo Famicom, Sweet Home. The basic premise was that I'd be able to do the things that I wasn't able to include in Sweet Home. It was mainly on the graphics front that my frustration had been building up. I was also confident that horror games could become a genre in themselves.
Of course. They've always been, in my opinion.
Based on the 1989 Japanese horror film of the same name, Fujiwara crafted a survival role-playing game with the player controlling the 5 characters from the movie, each with their own unique abilities. The player was tasked with exploring the spooky manor to solve various puzzles, all while trying to survive against a menagerie of monsters and traps that could permanently kill the characters.
This shit is the same. That game is the same kind of layout as, like, I want to say, like Zelda, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, like that. That kind of overhead gameplay.
Intended to be a remake of Sweet Home, but because Sweet
Oh,
Home
he
was
wrote a
based
book
on
called
the
Itchy
Japanese
Tasty.
property, Capcom did
That's
not
dope.
have the ability to use that license for their new game, so they decided to go with something original instead. And in terms of the development of the original Biohazard, it started sometime around 1993.
This is about to make me feel a lot of different ways by the time we're done with it. But I think one of the things that I'm going to regret is giving up on the Resident Evil games 4 games in.
Tokuro Fujiwara was a
I've played some of them after, but never invested in them again after Code Veronica.
Often have the greatest ability to get projects greenlit, even after Sweet Home. Even though they were able to create it and release it, it didn't do very well for Capcom, and it was never even released outside of Japan, which was another reason why it didn't really garner the sales numbers or the awareness that Fujiwara was hoping for.
Damn.
The next game, Biohazard, they were trying to aim for something a little more worldwide in its approach. They wanted it to be accessible and something that would showcase this new upcoming era of 3D gaming.
He found a young employee named Shinji Mikami, whose recent
Oh, don't you have to
games,
push that statue
and
off the
Aladdin
ledge
were
and then a
well-received,
map
and
breaks
asked
out of
him
it or
to lead
something?
development.
I remember that.
I ended up realizing that the game's enemies needed to be monsters of some description, as close as possible to humans in form rather than spirits. Yes, I thought, zombies. At that time, I recalled the film Dawn of the Dead. I loved that film. It was unfortunate, as far as the audience was concerned, that they couldn't survive. But with a game,
This motherfucker's voice, like, I feel like I just dialed 976 evil or something, like, and I'm about to get possessed.
I thought that this difference between horror games and horror movies,
I'm definitely locked in though, like.
That was the moment when I conceived Biohazard.
Love that little ooh. That was definitely from Resident Evil.
私は当時すごく
He said, but in terms of coming up with a reason, like referencing other media, like there were multiple reasons why zombies can materialize.
将来的にウイルスを使って生物を
He
変え
said
ていっ
like
たりとか
it could be because of magic or like
あ
a
るいは
gas
思うようにな
caused
って
it
たり
or
とか
those people
い
were
ろんなこ
dead
とができるようになるん
beforehand.
じゃないかって思ってたんですね。それでまあ
Lots
ゾ
of
ンビっていう
different
のは
reasons,
私が
but
入る
in
前に考えたんですけ
Biohazard,
ど
zombies
その
aren't
ゾンビ
the
に
only
どうやって
enemy
説
we
得力を
fight,
持たせようと思った時に
which was a great thing to do.
例えば細菌にやられたとか
Like the insects, the animals, the creatures, the monsters, it was all a good idea.
そのウイルスというのを採用しました。でそのウイルスを入れることによってまずゾンビになったことを
So I wonder, what's his check looking like every time a Resident Evil movie or video game gets made? Made, remastered, rebooted, whatever. Does he get his dues for it?
I think the most iconic thing about Resident Evil is, pressing start. You can run Resident Evil.
Yes.
Like, it just puts you in the game. And walking into that mansion and just the sound design and the creepiness factor that's going and exploring each room.
It's one of the most
Great thing about the old
atmospheric video
PlayStation
games
is
of
you
all
have to
time.
walk up to the door and you go through it. You didn't know what was going to be on the other side. It would sometimes be a surprise, and that's what I loved about the game.
It was the first time I experienced that level of gore in video games, and it definitely helped ramp up the horror.
This one, Barry blew the skull off that zombie in that sequence. I love that shit.
There are outlandish reports of families being attacked by a group of about 10 people.
Oh, this was the intro, the cutscene intro.
This cinematic inspiration.
This was This was peak video game cinema back in the day, man. This intro for Resident Evil, we hadn't seen anything like this.
But I do have a fairly strong recollection of the day where we were shooting the outdoor scenes. It was kind of outside of the center of Tokyo, near the Tama River. It was a hot night.
Excuse me, people. Now, I hope my allergies don't start kicking in. Because apparently it's all year round.
And that's holding the gun. And I recall running around in the grass. They would then just give us some direction, like, look this way, shoot your gun. It wasn't a rehearsal. It was all just kind of done by the seat of our pants. But it was a lot of fun. The crew were fun. And I think we didn't really know what we were getting into until we got there.
You never do. No! Don't go! That shit was so... The acting was so cheesy, but you couldn't tell me nothing about this intro back in the day.
That didn't actually exist. The gameplay consisted of action sequences.
Oh yeah, see, I never beat the first Resident Evil. I didn't get that far to where Chris is in that fucking whatever's rotating like that. I didn't get to the snake, the spider. My older brother used to play this shit faithfully, so he would beat these games and he would encounter all the monsters and creatures.
Elite Police Task Force, the Special Tactics and Rescue Service, or STARS.
I thought it was Rescue Squad.
Some murders in the mountains outside Raccoon City.
最初に特殊部隊を主人公にしたいっていうのはディレクターの三上さんの意向でした。で、私はじゃあそれに
So the idea of STARS, I wanted to have something that resembled a real-life police squad.
使うという手もあったんですけれど、よりユーザーさんに名前を
Said they thought of using SWAT, but ended up not doing it.
ちょっとリアルだけど存在しない名前っていうのをいろいろ考えて。
Oh, he came up with their specific story details for each STARS members.
Trapped in a sinister mansion infested with zombies, giant spiders, and other nightmarish
I don't like the way that spider looked.
The two uncovered that the
I don't like it, man.
Laboratory with illegal viral experiments.
Damn, I forgot there were sharks in that first game.
Umbrella Incorporated.
主人公を特殊部隊にする。
At least it looked like a shark or just a big ass piranha, a T-virus piranha. I don't know. It looked like a shark.
ものすごく訓練してるのも知ってたし、で、すごい重武装してるのも知っているので、じゃあそれとゾンビが戦った時に果たして本当にゾンビ怖いんだろうかっていうのがずっと心配としてあったんですよ。で、あとゾンビが出てくるだけではその知性がない存在と戦うっていうだけで本当にユーザーさんはその先にあるもっと怖いものを感じてくれるかなっていうのがちょっと心配してありました。そこでそのゾンビだけでなくその背後にもっと恐ろしい存在を作った方がいいんじゃないかと思いました。それで考えたのが国際的に拠点を持っている
really locked in on every like I meant to read off like the subtitles of what he's saying, but I'm just locked in on this shit because this guy's a big part of the brain that was Biohazard, yo.
知性がないゾンビとものすごい知性を持っている巨大な知性の塊のような会社というその2つの組み合わせによって巨大な2つの敵目に見えている
The zombies and the corporation
という二重構造にしたんですね。アンブレラ社の方は一見とてもみんなのために役に立っている会社という印象を出した。
Excuse people.
だからでみんなを守るものって何だろう。
He said when you open an umbrella, it'll protect you from things. In this case, it's supposed to protect you from viruses, bacteria, and so on.
細菌とかウイルスから守る製薬会社。
So I wanted to have that kind of motif going on. Is that like a katana fan in his hand right now? Oh shit!
To be a traitor, battled the
Who did Wesker just shoot? Was that Rebecca?
Escaped before the mansion exploded.
The game that I was in was pretty cutting edge for its time. I think it was really neat that they had the live action cutscenes in it. It wasn't just a shoot 'em up game. You know, you had to solve puzzles. It kind of ushered in a whole new.
Yeah, you got to give yourself the biggest fucking headache of a childhood.
Really powerful, especially against living things. Better take it with you.
In 2007, I would meet Shinji Mikami.
Barry, man, he would just pop up with some of the greatest advice and one-liners ever, and like I wouldn't be able to find Barry for the rest of the game at some point.
That Japanese people could understand.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
This house is dangerous.
Oh, I think that's Richard.
The idea
when Richard got bit by that snake, and then you got to go find the fucking serum. You got to go all around the house to find the serum, and when you find it, he died. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's not your fault. This place is crazy.
All of us, I think we just didn't really know.
To say the least,
all we knew is that it was a video game, something that we didn't know much about. I didn't even know until 20-some years later that I was part of Resident Evil because they
what?
Biohazard.
Resident Evil sold over 2.7 million copies worldwide after it was released on March 22nd, 1996. An expanded version of the game, Resident Evil, the Director's Cut,
I remember.
sold an additional 2 million copies.
It was just so different for games that I played at the time that it was the most immersive way to experience horror. It was a brand new way to experience horror other than film.
You said it, bro.
It was an immersive experience that I was not used to with video games. And the thing that I noticed the most about Resident Evil is just how fucking creepy they were. You know, the sound effects and the fact you couldn't see all the way down the halls and what the hell was that?
Ooh, that liquor when if Resident Evil 2, that scene they just showed, Claire going by that window and the liquor crawling past the window. Yo, oh my god, man. Another thing that used to scare the shit out of me in that first Resident Evil game was the fact that you could hear the dogs howling outside the windows, but you didn't even see them just yet. And so they jump through that window, and it's one of the best jump scares in a video game ever. But you could hear the dogs howling, yo. I'm not gonna lie, I'm so locked in on everything. Damn, that was when that zombie bit Kenneth's head off. I'm so locked in on them talking about and describing the process and the experiences of Resident Evil. I almost forgot that we were in a George A. Romero documentary just now, yo. I shouldn't have given up on the games, yo. I might have to get back to the games.
人を食べているのは人で形をしているけどもはや人ではなくなっているということを表現するためにあのシーンを考えました。そしてもう一つはその最初から
So yeah, obviously there's a lot of Romero influence in this kind of setup.
チップに見えてしまう心配があったので振り返るということによってその一種人間らしさも残しているでもそこに知性はないっていうその
He said, I would say that his films really kind of portrayed this idea, and it's quite effective.
Most people at Capcom at the time thought that the company was done for, heading into the second half of the 90s. And when Biohazard came out and surpassed anybody's sales expectations, I think that revitalized Capcom's business and gave them another hit to kind of move forward with. According to Yoshiki Okamoto, one of Capcom's other producers, that was one of the first million-selling titles on the original PlayStation.
Resident Evil was an explosive sleeper hit, and Capcom now had one clear goal: create a franchise.
That goal has not stopped in video games or in cinema especially.
Capcom sought interest in their newest hit video game to be brought to the big screen.
They got started on the sequel very quickly in early 1996, but once the original Biohazard was obviously going to be a great success, they assembled the team to go make the next one.
Okay, clearly that's a zombie right there because there's a bullet hole in the back of his head. The zombie's writing his fucking memoirs. Dear Journal, today was a rough one. Lost an ear, lost an eye, all while just sitting here. Wait, what is he writing?
In January 1997, Variety reported a German film production company, Constantine Film, purchased the film rights to Resident Evil, with Alan B. McElroy, at that time known for Halloween 4,
What?
The Return of Michael Myers, hired to write the screenplay. After I caught people in my office playing the Resident Evil game when it first hit the marketplace, I could instantly see its movie potential. We went to Capcom's headquarters in Japan
Oh
to show
my
the
God.
company that we got what the game was about and that we were capable of making a big international movie from their successful game.
Not the guy
They
that wrote
promised
the
that we would
second
take
best
this concept
Halloween
seriously
sequel in the
and
entire
succeed on a
franchise.
regular basis. I think the prime reason we beat out any fierce Hollywood competition for the rights is because Constantine is an independent company. When we make decisions, we make them fast, because there aren't 100 other executives to consult. Capcom responded with equal promptness, and we were granted the film rights in 1997. By the
97,
mid-90s,
boy.
Constantine
The
Film
fuck is
was known in the United States.
Bastion and
primarily for producing the never-ending
Falcor
story
doing?
in 1984.
Wasn't the name
and for an
Falcor?
unreleased adaptation of the Fantastic Four in 1993. Made for $2 million, Fantastic Four was produced in conjunction with Roger Corman's New World Pictures.
Jesus, I mean, at least the Doctor
Constantine
Doom mask in
having
that
had the
original
rights to the
Fantastic Four
property
movie
for
looks
several
good.
years, were on the verge of
But the
having
rest of it, that
rights
movie looks like
revert back
shit.
to Marvel Comics if a film wasn't put into production by December 31st, 1992. Principal photography commenced 3 days before the deadline. Recounted by the film's actors and even Stan Lee himself, the film was never intended for release. Critics point to the film as an embarrassing example of greed. But the truth was that Constantine Films stood to lose on their initial investment, an investment that later paid off when 20th Century Fox produced their own Fantastic Four film and paid Constantine as part of the deal. Alan McElroy delivered his first draft in May 1997. The script changed major elements of the game. The characters were no longer an elite police unit, instead a ragtag group of military veterans, each with personal problems, exploited by Albert Wesker to recruit them. Absent was the iconic mansion of the game. Instead, the action took place within a top-secret laboratory, built within a mountainside. As McElroy submitted his first draft, Capcom confirmed their partnership with Constantine Film through interviews during the Electronic Entertainment Expo event. Capcom showcased upcoming titles, including the highly anticipated Resident Evil 2. The movie was expected to film shortly, with a release near the end of
Yeah, I remember
1998.
Resident Evil
But
2
for
was a
Capcom,
big
the sequel to
deal,
Resident
man.
Evil that surpassed the original
Double
was
disc.
the primary
You could play
focus
as
of the company. Capcom
Claire
earned
or
nearly
Leon.
$200 million in sales from the original.
You got the city to
Who
run around,
directed
Raccoon
and
City to
Hideki
run around
Kamiya
in. It was a
felt
big
intense
deal, man.
pressure for the sequel to live up to its predecessor. It was all too realistic. The ominous atmosphere from the first game, as represented in things like the Spencer Mansion itself, the armor room, key items like the jewelry box and gemstones, all that had been removed. The police station, too, had been changed to a very modern building. As a result, everything felt too modern and strangely sterile. This doesn't feel like Resident Evil. Of course, wiping the slate clean and going back to zero on a project that's already 70% complete is no
I mean,
mean feat.
I
In
liked
that
Resident
sense,
Evil 2.
I
It
think
just,
was a very
I guess the
brave
difference
move
was it
from
was
the
more,
developers.
there's more room, there's more
The
leg
original
room
build
to move
was
around.
created
Like it wasn't as
after the
claustrophobic.
team couldn't match the
But
quality
I think it's,
expected not
I think it was a
only
good
by
sequel
Capcom
game,
executives,
sequel
but
game.
also their own expectations. Now rebuilt from the ground up with a script written by Nobuo Sugimura, Resident Evil 2 was delayed
Oh,
to
that
January
eyeball on that,
1998.
that front
With
cover,
increased
man.
hype surrounding the game, Capcom planned an ambitious marketing campaign unheard of for a video game at that time. And
Oh,
committed
that
$1.5
intro,
million
the
on a
the
live-action
cutscenes
commercial
for the
to
Resident
advertise
Evil
the upcoming
2
sequel.
intro is so good,
There
man.
was only one man they had in mind to
Yep.
direct.
You know.
That was kind of a big deal because it was the first time George had opened a lens on anything, especially something involving zombies, for years. And so that was big news. It made the cover of Fangoria.
We do have some materials that relate directly to the commercial for Biohazard 2, as it was known in Japan.
Look at those storyboards,
It's a
man.
commercial for Resident Evil 2 in the United States. And it's some of the storyboards for this commercial, some of the character designs, and some of the kind of artwork that would have been used to inspire this. A lot of information for him, really, about who the characters are, what the storyline of this was, so that he could kind of effectively make this commercial. He himself was not a gamer, so he was not familiar with these games, so some of this was to give him this background info.
Shot over several nights in downtown Los Angeles at the Lincoln Heights Jail, an empty and often used filming location for movies, TV, and music videos.
Hell yeah,
the
look at
building
that
was dressed
place.
To resemble the
It's creepy as
Raccoon
hell.
Police Department, a location from the upcoming Resident Evil 2.
I wound up as a zombie in a George Romero commercial. I'm still
Huh.
marveling about that. I mean, that's as a horror
Practical
nerd,
effects on the
that's one
zombies
of the
look great,
great
man.
moments of your life.
He's got a
I was sitting in
Supernova
a commercial,
poster in his
and
background. I've never seen that
request
movie.
was there would be heavy
It's Angela
prosthetics
Bassett.
makeup.
Not only was legendary
Peter
director George
Fasinelli.
A. Romero directing, but the production was filled with top-level talent both in front and behind the camera.
I said, geez, I feel like I'm in a George Romero movie. And the makeup artist says to me, didn't you see George standing out there? The amazing thing is the production, the call sheet, listed the director as Ai Kanbara. And that was a Japanese artist, Tai Kanbara had just passed away. And
Oh,
George
wow.
Romero had always skirted the unions. He'd always stayed away from the DGA and everything. So what they did is when George Romero had a pseudonym to direct this commercial, we're at Lincoln Heights Jail. I remember when I pulled up to Lincoln Heights, it said Raccoon City Police Department, and there was a zombie leaning on the sign smoking a cigarette, which was kind of the weird introduction to the world. They didn't call it Resident Evil, they called it by the Japanese title, which was Project Biohazard 2. When Romero came towards us, Romero was in flip-flops and he had an open collar shirt and baggy shorts. He was not dressed for October, the September-October California weather. He was dressed like he was going to the beach in June, and everybody, I remember his assistant was fretting, George, can I get you a coat? And he goes, nah, I'm good. I love it. I love it. He goes, it feels like, I think he said it feels like August in Pittsburgh. He just looks so comfortable. He pointed out to several people he had his lucky scarf on.
Brad Renfro played Leon Kennedy, one of two.
Brad Renfro?
Brad had a
I was wondering why he looked so familiar. I couldn't figure out if that motherfucker was he looked like somebody
Adrienne
else.
France played Claire Redfield, sister of the original game's Chris Redfield, and the other protagonist for the game. Peter Deming was the director of photography, a cinematographer on iconic films Evil Dead 2 for Sam Raimi, Lost Highway for David Lynch, and Scream 2 for Wes Craven.
Damn.
The makeup effects were accomplished
Screaming Mad George! Yo, he did effects on the Guyver, and he did some of the effects on Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and Silent Night, Deadly Night 5. Screaming Mad George is
with a professional like
wow
Mad
boy.
George, and he's such a great artist, and just to see the day-to-day.
His effect, no wonder the effects were what they were. Screaming Mad George is
ideas. I can tell
legend.
Give it a different take on the traditional zombie movie. So as you can see down here, there's a lot of the original prosthetics, and then this is a shoulder piece that was.
Now I don't remember. Did Screaming Mad George
shoulder.
direct the Guyver
Nice
movie too,
looking piece.
or did he
Right
just do
here,
the effects?
and then
I
we
don't
do it
remember.
From underneath clothes, maybe the shoulder be torn away. George really wanted to take it to a different level, especially since George Romero, I understood at the time, was talking to him about possibly having him work on the movie.
The heavy levels of blood and gore that Screaming Mad George was known for were explicitly prohibited for the expected release format. Even still,
damn.
the zombies had their own unique appearance despite the restrictions. Dried blood, torn clothing.
Yeah, those
and patched
those
skin
zombies
were
look
still
great,
visually
man.
impressive, invoking the work of Tom
Imagine
Savini
all
and
the
Greg
shitty
Nicotero's
zombie
work on
movies
Day of the
where
Dead.
if they've got one thing to spend the budget on, it's practical effects. Imagine the ones that don't even spend it on that.
Dried blood. And I said, hey, you know, this is a zombie thing. Why don't we have blood? The Japanese company that was doing it was a little leery about blood. They didn't want to emphasize red blood in the commercial, so everything was fairly dark. It was more like
Really?
the grave a while. That's why the blood would pool in our fingers, and our fingers are black.
The scale of the commercial led the production to film a making-of feature. Japanese press were brought to the LA set to interview.
You know,
cast and
I
crew,
think that's pretty
perhaps due to
interesting.
Brad
And
Renfro's contract restrictions,
if that's what
no Japanese
Constantine wanted,
journalists
or
were
Constantine,
prohibited from
whatever,
set,
if that's what they
except for
wanted, then it
sole
makes sense why the
Canadian
first two
journalists
movies are
working
as
in Japan.
tame as they
No one in
are.
England was granted complete
I don't know.
access to the production, and Romero was more than pleased to share his excitement with the journalist about working on a project within the genre he had helped create.
Capcom flew me over to Hollywood to be involved with this shoot, and it was really a fantastic experience for me because I was not a part of the film world at the time. I was very fascinated by the film world. I was there for all their meetings.
I feel you pain,
over
brother.
To Screaming Mad George, big makeup artist. He worked on Carpenter movies, whatever, so many Brian Usna films. They made 2 spots. They made a 15-second spot and a 30-second spot. I was told was $1.5 million. And I asked George that on the set. I said, tell me about this budget. And he goes, well, it's the most money I've ever had on a second per second basis.
Every makeup artist in town came by to kiss the ring because George Romero was there. So it was a who's who of Hollywood special effects makeup artists. Matt Rose, who did Hellboy, brought like 30 Dawn of the Dead from every different country for posters for George Romero to sign. The K&B guys were there to see George. It was just, as someone who knows every one of these makeup artists, it was just really exciting to watch them come one by one to pay tribute to the king.
We were done with the commercial. George got his reel from Japan. He screened it for quite a few employees on different occasions, and at one time he brought out the commercial reel and we watched the short cut. There was a 15-second, there was like a 30-second, and there was this 2-minute long trailer. And then he said to us all, would you like to see the long version of it? And we were like, oh wow, there's a longer version than the 2 minutes? And he's like, sure, watch this. And we watched this, basically a short film directed by George Romero of Resident Evil. And I really believe that was George Romero's and Screaming Mad George's calling card to show that they could do the film.
That was when people were like, you know what? This guy gets it.
Theaters and on television with the making of Biohazard 2 commercial.
Now, I don't know how the fuck how Leon and Claire were going to get out of that. They were being literally walled in. Zombies down one end of the hall, zombies down the other end. Like, where y'all going? Back to back.
At least to the DP, and 2 or 3 times just observing to himself out loud. He goes, when he was directing the zombies, he goes, I really feel like I'm ripping myself off here. And everybody on the crew kept saying, George is going to direct the movie version. And I remember 3 or 4 hours into it, I thought, no, he's not. You could see he was starting to have misgivings. He would set up a shot and go, boy, this really feels familiar to me.
As part of its North American campaign, Capcom USA...
I wonder how many directors feel that way. Like, do they hate or love to rip themselves off? Like, add other, shit from their movies into other movies they're doing? I don't know. I feel like if anybody's going to rip you off, it might as well be you.
While considered a gamble,
oh, that was a great. I love when that gun shop owner gets trampled to the ground like that.
Record-breaking sales, selling almost 400,000 copies and earning more than $19 million.
Oh shit! I forgot there was a big ass alligator in the sewer in Resident Evil 2.
Previous best-selling video games, Final Fantasy VII and Super Mario 64.
One of my favorites, man. Many hours and days lost
right out of the gate,
getting all those stars and trying to whip Bowser's ass in Mario 64, boy.
It sold over 1 million copies in its initial week, which at that time, I believe only 2 franchises in Japanese gaming had ever done those kinds of numbers right out of the gate, and they were Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest.
The Resident Evil
I'm sorry, man. I just could never get into the Final Fantasy games ever.
Getting the film into
the later games definitely look cool, graphics look cool, but I just couldn't do it.
Of the Dead to make that a reality. When Alan McElroy was hired to adapt the game, Resident Evil was only 9 months old. Through the writing process, a sequel had been released, and rumors circulated that Capcom now had multiple sequels in development.
Jesus.
This didn't bode well for the executives at Constantine Film, who quickly soured.
Why would they just put somebody with a hazmat suit?
Then the second game comes out, and all of a sudden your movie based on the first looks really dated and boring.
Damn.
And you say, what do we do now? Capcom had the answer.
They just didn't want Alan on board anymore.
Word of Romero's commercial leaked across the early internet, and rumors persisted he was hired to direct the film. Fangoria reached out to George Romero for clarification, but he would only comment that he was interested. The comment ignited the fans, and rumors continued. Constantine Film announced that Bernd Eichinger would serve as producer on the film. Eichinger, a renowned German producer and co-owner of Constantine Film, had recent success with Smilla's Sense of Snow, in 1997.
Oh,
In
that's
June
one of my favorite
1998,
movies I've never
PSM
seen
leaked
before.
details from a revised draft by Alan McElroy, dated January 22nd, 1998. This would be the only time information from the script was made available to the public. While excited to share the leaks, unknown to the magazine or its readers, McElroy's scripts had already been rejected.
The
Damn.
PSM article is quite interesting for two reasons. The details provided vary considerably from the May 28, 1997 draft that is found at the George A. Romero archives. The PSM article does
Look at that
include some sort of
that
graphic
miniature
image.
Zenith
Whether real
radio.
or a mock-up, I'm not entirely sure, but it does have a draft date of January
Night of the Living Dead.
1998. So they're allegedly spelling
Nod for
a
sure.
later revised script than the one the archives has, and this is the only time that information was drafted has ever been made available. Compared to the first script from 1997, the version in the PSM article shows that there's changes that make it closer to the games, yet some things are also removed.
He sounds like when Robert Downey Jr. was talking like Kirk Lazarus in Tropic Thunder. He said, "My films trigger human emotion."
Destroyed. Everyone gets killed by something unseen before they can even get out of the helicopter. There's certainly changed as far as the PSM article is concerned, saying there's no mention of Stars or Umbrella in the final draft, though they are mentioned in the first. It seems for the revision, Stars' Bravo team was replaced as a generic SWAT team from Raccoon City. Some details of the characters also changed between drafts. Wesker is a captain within the Stars, an Army Special Forces unit, and his lieutenant is Joseph Frost, who is an ineffective suck-up that the other characters constantly mock or play pranks on. For the rewrite, Wesker is now...
You mean Joseph that they killed first in the opening cutscene?
In the May 1997 draft, Barry Burton has been changed from Caucasian to African American and is currently going through his third...
Oh, they would call that. You imagine how many people would be like, "This Resident Evil version is woke. Barry's not black."
The originally states that Barry is retired and runs a restaurant, so it seems a lot of work was really done on his character. Chris comes across as the hero, although he often acts like a bit of a jerk. Jill is the explosives expert, and Brad Vickers is the team medic, although actually it turns out he's
Brad
a guy named
Vickers.
Mike who hacked into the
I felt some type of way when Brad Vickers died, when Nemesis killed him in Resident Evil 3.
The original script was 100.
Put that tentacle right through his
The
eye.
first 58 to 60 pages or so sets this up and follows their training. I'm watching the pages go by and wondering, when the fuck are we getting to the mansion? This is too much. It
Damn.
flies into Raccoon Forest, and as soon as they land, they're attacked by monstrous dogs. The PSM article is where this differs. It seems to imply that the zombie dogs were the same from the game, but in the original script, they were dogs the size of elephants. And they
What?
killed Lieutenant Frost by tearing him and the helicopter apart. This is where it gets very interesting.
Dogs
It
the
is
size of
described as having a
elephants.
honeycomb-like pattern on it, and they're invincible, forcing the team to escape into the secret Umbrella lab. The PSM article describes the final version as a mansion/lab, so maybe McElroy made an attempt to show the actual mansion in the rewrite as a lab in the first draft was just built into a mountain. That's about the first 70 pages. The remaining ones are a series of scenes as the team gets picked off one by one.
Damn.
They did do the iconic zombie turning scene from the game, but it turns out to be a scientist that then begins to talk to them. I'm not kidding.
What?
And notice the same honeycomb-like pattern is on the man's
So it was a
face,
pump
whereas
fake.
he attacks the group, and Barry's bitten. It seems in this, the virus doesn't really make you a zombie, but just makes you mentally unstable and homicidal. It also creates this weird
So it's like
honeycomb effect
28 days
where
later,
when you're
pretty much.
shot, stabbed, whatever. The virus allows your wounds to heal, making you effectively immortal, but not a zombie.
What?
There's some dialogue about whether Barry is infected, and Chris argues they should execute him before he turns on them. And then there's a
It's like the Crazies or
Eventually,
28 days
Barry
later.
sacrifices himself to a horde of mutated scientists that swarm them all, allowing the rest of the team time to escape. There's more scenes with the not zombies. There's
So
a scene with
why
a
would
giant spider and
Barry always does not have to make the sacrifice play?
also trying to break down the door.
Because he did that in Resident Evil Retribution.
Make appearance at one point
He
attacking
wasted
the
his
team in the
character.
service elevator. Those scenes are actually tense and well written, and it was great seeing some of Resident Evil's lesser monsters get some attention. Brad is discovered to be the imposter Mike and is later killed. And eventually there's an argument between Wesker, who is ordered to get the research from the bottom level, and Chris and Jill, who just want to escape to the helipad on the roof of the facility. Wesker continues on alone, but when he reaches the bottom he discovers the entire mission was a trap, and the government sent Wesker to be the scientist's ultimate experiment.
Damn.
Because he was considered the ultimate soldier.
Damn.
Perfect scientists strap him to a table and inject him directly with the T-virus.
Oh.
Chris and Jill make it to the top of the mountain and the rooftop helipad.
So what does Wesker turn into?
Wesker appears, now
Ooh,
into the tyrant.
he turns
Tells
into the
Chris and Jill
tyrant?
He's executing them for disobeying their superior. Yeah, he talks, even as the tyrant. Barry suddenly reappears.
Tyrant
He's
talks in
described
Resident
the
Evil
script
Extinction,
having
so it's cool.
reptilian skin, and I can only imagine it as like the game's monster, the Hunters, but with the head of Barry Burton. Wesker kills Barry after a brief fight, and like the end of the video game, someone the chopper throws Chris a rocket launcher to blow up Wesker. Chris and Jill jump on the chopper, they kiss, and ride away. The PSM article says there was no mention of Stars or umbrella in the revised script. They were there in the first draft, so I don't know if there was a conscious decision by Alan McElroy, or if this is part of the producer's notes to remove those elements. There's also mentioned in the PSM article that, and I quote while trying not to scoff, no Resident Evil movie could be complete without a Jill Valentine shower scene, end quote. I can't remember if that was in the first draft or not. It may have only been part of the rewrites. It's fascinating to read the first draft and compare it to the PSM article. The basic premise sounds the same, but you could see certain changes that occurred. McElroy was working through the concept, trying to deliver a script based on other
Yeah,
ideas,
no. This version.
The PSM article ends with optimism for the script from the information they were given. But McElroy had already been removed from the project by then. Because of the timing of the article and what was about to follow, it wouldn't surprise me if the script was leaked to PSM in reprisal. We'll never know.
In July 1998,
yeah, Alan B. McElroy, fantastic writer, man. I want to interview that guy so bad. Like I said, he's responsible for the second best Halloween sequel in the franchise, Halloween 4. But his ideas for the Resident Evil movie he was going to do, probably not. No. But I feel like if it would have got made, I wouldn't have just shot it down like, oh, this is trash. Because, look, we've been through how many Resident Evil movies and how many, animated movies, a TV show. Like, I think it would have existed interestingly amongst the rest of them.
Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, homepageofthedead.com was the absolute best message board for anything George Romero. That's where I spent a lot of my time. And I remember reading a lot of posts that, hey, George is making Resident Evil. Okay, I'm down for that. The rumor mill at the time on the internet wasn't very rampant. You got one or two bits of information, and you kind of hung on that for a while. In a way that, George tackling one of my favorite video games. Like, how could this not be a win-win? Like, how is this not going to be a blockbuster?
Exactly.
I'm working on it right now. As I speak to you, I'm staring at my computer screen, and I'm writing the screenplay. I think it's going to move pretty quickly. I think I shouldn't be speaking for those guys, but I think Capcom would like to have it released somewhere around the time they release the third game. I don't know when that's going to be. Next summer? Fall? I don't know exactly.
Coming off of the excitement I had of the Resident Evil 2 live-action trailer, at that time there was nothing more I wanted than a live-action Resident Evil movie. When it was first announced, I was so excited.
I knew the people that owned the rights, Constantine Films. They distributed the last two of my zombie films in Germany. Coincidentally, while they were developing the project, I was called by Capcom to do a commercial for them. Everyone got together, and Capcom thought it would be a good idea if I work on the film. The Constantine guys supported me, so that's how it happened.
And the Capcom people themselves, I mean, they were very, very happy to have George on the film. And they didn't hide the fact that Biohazard, the games, were inspired directly by George Romero's films. If they didn't exist, there would be no Biohazard.
They've already made some suggestions in the story conferences we've had. They're smart, and they know, or they think they know, what makes their game sell. That's the way they want it. The biggest piece of input that they had was that they don't want any of the human characters to show any remorse. Just blam, blam, blam. That's fine by me.
Wow.
During online chat sessions,
so they don't want
divulged to fans that
no layers at all, or is it just no remorse when it comes to killing the creatures? Because that I can understand.
My script tries very much to stick to the game. I did change some of the relationships. Chris is not a STARS trooper. He's a local guy. Jill is a trooper living in Raccoon City undercover. They fall in love. Chris doesn't realize she is working for STARS. Romance is not big in this movie. That's how they meet, and Chris winds up following the team into the mansion. That's basically the only big difference, that Chris isn't a STARS guy. We're trying to keep all the dark qualities of the game. We will probably have to shoot 2 versions, because in the US and in many other countries, the violence won't be tolerated. However, in Japan and Germany, and many territories where the restrictions are not as stringent, the complete version will be released. I'm sure there will be director's cut versions released everywhere on video.
But it really does sort of follow...
Romance isn't big in any of George A. Romero's zombie movies, so I'd be perfectly fine with that.
In the film that was originally released.
I have played the game with my son. I never beat it. My assistant actually set up a video camera and shot video of the TV screen while he played the entire game. This took weeks. He beat the game. I've played
Good for him.
Kids, but I'm not hooked. I went through a phase where I was, back in the early Nintendo days. As far as I ever got was sitting there right after I made Monkey Shines with Drew Mattson. I beat The Legend of Zelda, and I
good for him, because I'm not... Listen,
In a 6-week period,
whatever the
Romero,
Zelda game was
along
on
with his
64, the
producer Peter Grunwald, had written
Ocarina
an
of Time or
initial
whatever it was,
10-page
that was the
treatment
only one I
and
really
3
got into.
drafts of the script dated
But that game is so
September
fucking
29th,
long that you
October
see
5th,
Zelda
and
grow up.
October
Like
7th.
you see him
We
go
see
from
the
like a
treatment.
kid to a
And then
teenager.
we have sort of 3
I mean, not
phases,
Zelda. I know
very
people.
congested
Goddamn,
in
Link.
timeframe. So he wrote this treatment in August of
All the
98,
fanboys
with
out
the
there
full
would
script done in
definitely come
September
after
of
you if you
98,
call Link
September
Zelda.
29th,
I
and
grew
then
up
we
thinking the
see
motherfucker's name was
October 5th
Zelda.
and
I didn't
October
know.
7th is the revision drafts.
Throughout the writing period,
I want to see the live
story
action
remained
Zelda.
unchanged.
I know
A
people are
variety
going to
of
go
minor
crazy if it's
alterations
done
and
right.
edits
It's going to make a
occurred.
lot of money
The
if it's done
variances
right.
between the scripts is pretty scant. There are not a whole lot of editing.
Here's an example of a minor edit from the October 5th to the October 7th draft, or even just something simple where there's just a change in dialogue to say from a scud to stinger.
So I do think that October 7th one really is the final one that got handed over. Even the October 5th one just has minor edits.
I saw Peter
where it's got
Grunwood's name
dialogue
on
some
that
grammar
script.
that were cleaned up for the October 7th one. And so that feels like the most polished one that was handed off. The other big piece of it that was edited out of that last final one is it's the only version in which there is no note in the end for a title card of coming soon Resident Evil 2. It just, the screen goes black. The treatment and all of the other 2 versions promote and advertise that there will be a Resident Evil 2. Kind of right off the bat that we're going to.
Of course, it would be a part 2.
George contacted friend and special effects artist Greg Nicotero if his company, K&B Effects, could provide the special effects for the film.
Of
concerns
course.
with the game's climactic boss monster, the Tyrant. Nicotero contacted legendary horror artist Bernie Wrightson, known for his work on Swamp Thing, Cycle of the Werewolf, and the comic book adaptation of George Romero's Creepshow, and commissioned him
And the
to
fact
sketch
that
designs.
the fact that Greg Nicotero was on board, man, is insane. It was only right. If it wasn't going to be Greg Nicotero and the rest of K&B, then it was going to be Tom Savini. I'm cool with either one. I would have been cool with either one.
Obviously, my dad, a fan of his, he got the call about this project, explaining like George Romero and I are basically doing our rendition of an EC comic horror anthology. Would you be interested in doing the actual comic book tie-in that goes with the movie?
I love that they're using clips of Creepshow when they're showing the comic book in Creepshow.
98 or 99, he got
which George A. Romero directed.
The guys at K&B Effects for this untitled Kevin Williamson.
Oh, that's the Faculty. I forgot K&B worked on the Faculty too. What the fuck didn't they work on in the 99 and the 2000?
Nicotero read the script and read this giant sea creature alien that they had to build for it, and thought to himself, we need a Bernie Wrightson creature for this project. And so they contacted him out of the blue, approached him about this project. He was still living in New York State at this point, and was basically doing his illustrations and sending them via fax. At this point, he had already been planning, at least in his mind, the idea of transitioning away from doing predominantly comic book artwork and trying to get more creative.
That is amazing artwork, by the way.
So after
really good, man. Like the crazy thing is, I used to do art. I can't draw worth a damn anymore, but my daughter's getting really fucking good at it, especially the anime stuff.
About any follow-up projects.
But I wish
he got involved.
I could still draw like that.
It's like, yeah, George Romero is going to be directing this adaptation of this video game. Is he familiar with it? Not really, but he knows what to go off of. And so
shout out to not only the artists out there, but the sculptors, the people that sculpt those figurines.
My understanding is the only character that he was.
Y'all are heaven sent.
After multiple revisions, Romero submitted his first draft. Now he would wait for Constantine Films.
All right, now what they talk, they look like the Umbrella Corporation right there.
The 1999 issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly published an extensive 4-page interview with George Romero, though the actual interview within had been conducted months earlier. While the interview left fans excited for the film, the EGM article marks the final time George Romero remained positive about Resident Evil.
What?
In May 1999,
what happened?
GameSpot interviewed senior Capcom producer Yoshiki Okamoto. When Okamoto was asked about when gamers could expect the movie in theaters, he replied, "We know the movie is going to be out there someday. There is a scenario coming, but there's no script yet, so the film isn't out of its scripting stages yet." That's odd. Romero's Resident Evil vision was supposed to be in progress months ago. The next question, of course, had to be about Romero's involvement. What became of his script? Okamoto commented, "His script wasn't good, so Romero was
What? His script wasn't good, so Romero was fired. Are you fucking kidding me?
Rumors circulated PSX.IGN threw gasoline on the fire with an unverified story from an unknown source that in retrospect sounded more like a smear campaign against the director.
Right!
Another good industry source told IGN that Romero lacked the feel of Resident Evil. He essentially was turning Resident Evil into Dawn of the Dead, instead of making it new and original, the source added. He wanted to put sunglasses on the zombies and do other goofy stuff that didn't fit in at all.
I was very aware, and actually I'd been
Oh
contacted
boy,
by
the beginning of the end.
assistant. We're planning to come to Japan, and George really wants to meet up with you. I was very happy about that. And then suddenly the plug was pulled on this, and it was very disheartening.
That's
that they
crazy.
would do that.
George Romero moved on to prep his next film, Bruiser, but any chance fans had to ask.
I've never seen Bruiser either.
George was just as confused. The internet says yes, but I don't know. I don't recall George ever being fired. I think we'd satisfied the first part of our contract, and Constantine decided not to go any
Bruiser
further.
had
In the
Jason
end,
Fleming as
Constantine
this
wanted it to be
killer
which is
with
what
this
helped
white
him
mask
quit,
on his
right?
stuck on his
That
face or
wasn't
something,
what
man. It just
So
looked
that was
strange.
the creative difference. George's version was fast-paced and exhilarating, a horror movie most of all. It was true to his roots and the roots of the game. I don't think Constantine was wrong in the approach they ended up choosing. It was just different from where we had all started.
Wow.
Between May and
That is-
September 1999, Constantine Film had either failed to inform Romero he had been fired, or were retaining him until his replacement was secured. Websites, news articles, and fan speculation continued to spread rumors that Romero was indeed still attached to direct, and confusion continued. Apparently, an insider in the production business has been frequenting prosthetics master Tom Savini's website, has hinted that George Romero may be leaving Resident Evil for good, even though Capcom has confirmed that George Romero was fired from writing the script for Resident Evil. He was still listed as the director. Apparently, neither
Yeah, that's so
Romero nor
probably so
Capcom
people wouldn't
approved
fucking
of it,
panic.
and his name is currently used as the hook to draw in investment.
Exactly.
The man is displeased with this, of course, and the buzz has it that he'll be leaving for good in the near future. The months gave way to rumors of the new writers and directors attached to the film.
I love how that
But
door just
still,
opened up.
no
It's
official
live
statement
action, but the
for
door
Romero's
opened up
termination,
like how it does in the
no update
games
on
in
the
Resident
film
Evil.
itself. Would there even be a movie?
Of course
After
there
more than a
will.
year of
Several.
speculation and rumors, Variety reported that Constantine Film had found its new writer and director of Mortal Kombat,
Yeah.
Event Horizon,
And as much as I love Mortal Kombat, because Paul W.S. Anderson was the guy for the job, right?
And direct the Resident Evil
Fuck.
movie.
When that Variety article dropped, there just seemed to be a heaviness or a melancholy that was cast upon many of the fans. Some went even as far as to make a petition to have the film changed or cancelled entirely.
No, that's
even
too
though Capcom
much.
said Romero was fired, there were conflicting reports. It seemed even Romero didn't know what was going on, and I think many held out hope that he would still at least direct. So when it was announced that Paul W.S. Anderson was hired, there was some initial optimism. This was the director that did Event Horizon, after all, a genuinely scary movie.
The plot
Event Horizon was great.
among fans.
Mortal Kombat was cool.
Story focuses on a
But
military unit that
I'll
fights against
I'll
a
hold
villain
off on saying what I gotta say.
that is out of control. In order to save the world, the military unit must combat hundreds of scientists who have mutated into flesh-eating undead due to a laboratory accident.
But then with the plot announced, with its focus on supercomputers killing people, and just a minor mention of flesh-eating zombies, I think it was the website 10MC that I recall summing it up best, saying, if you're hoping for a decent adaptation of the Resident Evil games to a feature film, just give up now.
Anderson
Damn.
previously pursued the film rights after playing the video game.
That drawing right there, was that the Weeping Angel from Return of the Living Dead?
Years prior, not to be dissuaded.
Looked like it.
Wrote an original treatment dubbed The Undead. If Constantine Film passed on it, he planned to shop the project to other studios as an original zombie film. Unknown to the public or Paul Anderson, years of development on the Resident Evil movie had taken its toll. The rights were set to expire, and Constantine Film prepared to abandon the project. Anderson pitched The Undead and asked French producer Samuel Hadida to pay for the renewal of the rights. Eichinger loved the concept and hired Anderson to write and direct. Movies based on video games and cyber characters are a relatively new genre, so naturally early teething problems during development would occur. Everyone could see the concept would make a great action horror thriller because it had such a haunting idea behind it. But only when Paul came in, wrote a suspenseful script, and liberated the story from its game confines did all our collaborative energies spark and come together. After the announcement, a leaked casting call revealed most of the plot through its character descriptions, confirming the script would indeed be an original story. Fans became confused and irritated at the idea of a film based on Resident Evil lacking few connections to the actual games.
When the casting sheet was leaked, the fans immediately were more outraged than when the basic plot had released. Gone were iconic characters like Chris, Jill, and Albert Wesker.
All of them.
So we had
At least in the first movie.
Alice and Rain. And the sheet even gave away some of the plot as well. Some fans, of course, refused to believe it. Others wondered if they were code names for fake characters and plot details to give the film an authenticity. Most fans couldn't understand what any of the hell had to do with Resident Evil. It sure
Love the
didn't sound
typewriter
like
from Resident Evil. Love that.
and it didn't help when you'd see the behind the scenes. I remember when the movie released in 2002, Anderson was talking about how he loved the games, but he didn't want to repeat anything from them because we knew what was going to happen to these characters.
I'm a huge fan of games and have played all of them. As a diehard fan, I wanted a movie version that is respectful of it, builds on its premise, and delivers on its promise. To be scary, you have to be unpredictable, and that's why I wanted to use a set of fresh characters.
You could have easily changed what happened to the fucking characters. You didn't have to go every storyline from every game.
Going to be killed because you
what a fucking cop-out, yo.
The suspense dynamic of who is going to live, who is going to die, and what people's allegiances are was only going to work with new characters.
No, that's not true.
Also fits in with the world of the game, which is constantly expanding and introducing new characters and locations.
The irony is, he directed Mortal Kombat, also based
Cop
on the
out.
game. We already knew the heroes were going to win because they showed up in other installments of the games. Though it's worth noting, Anderson didn't write Mortal Kombat. He did, of course, write the script for the Resident Evil film. Had he written a Mortal Kombat movie, maybe the same thing would have happened there.
No.
Following Anderson's announcement, a review of George Romero's screenplay appeared on the website Ain't It Cool News.
The immediate fascinating detail of the Ain't It Cool News article on Romero's script is that the article was published right around the time that Paul W.S. Anderson is announced as the new writer and director. It's all as if someone purposely leaked the script in some sort of reprisal on George's behalf.
Probably.
The Ain't It Cool News journalist gushed over the material, and for almost a year it was our only deep dive into a screenplay before the full version eventually arrived online. Romero doesn't
I'm ready to
shy
read
from
this
the game's
shit in
source material
full.
and inspirations. There's definite nods to the structure and character of the film Aliens, for example, one of the inspirations for Resident Evil. It even has a character named Rosie Rodriguez, described in the script as, quote, a tough, body-built babe, end quote. Like his film Day of the Dead, there are also scenes of hordes of zombies getting sprayed by M16s while entering ever closer to their victims. Well, McElroy's script was 114 pages and spent half of that getting us to the start of what we recognise as the video game. Romero doesn't waste any time at all. The script comes in at a lean 96 pages, and there is economic use of the page, filled with scene after scene of gruesome monsters from the video game killing these characters in violent ways. Page 20
Love that severed head in Day of the
characters
Dead.
are standing in the iconic main hall of the mansion. The script begins with shadowy figures in a conference room watching video footage of scientists being attacked by something unseen. A scientist, Dr. John Marcus, is pleading into the camera to keep the lab sealed as people are running and screaming, and he's ripped off cameras at topples, showing a canted view of a zombie tearing into its victim. It turns towards us and smashes the camera as the title pops up. Interestingly,
I said Jesus, people, because that the shot of that head falling on the floor when that zombie bites it off from the game, it's kind of crazy.
Stages, or if Capcom may have taken the name for the character. There does seem to be evidence that the character Dr. Marcus in Resident Evil 0 had just been created, so it's most likely George had access to some of the material and inserted it into the story. The iconic turning zombie also shows up here, and it's nice that Romero recognised that part from the game and inserted it too. It cuts then to Chris
Johannes Roberts did the same thing in Welcome to Raccoon City.
In George's script, Chris is a Native American. He's a rancher. There's a lot of Romero's prior works I feel bleeding in here, with our main protagonist being a blue-collar character. What's most interesting is Chris has changed to be part Mohawk. The 90s American cinema and television had an explosive wave of entertainment, including Native American images and characters, and sometimes telling their stories. We may never know whose decision it was to make Chris a Native American, as neither George or Peter have ever commented on this.
People would have called that shit woke too nowadays.
George being known for telling stories directly through the eyes of the outsider.
Right.
From Ben in Night of the Living Dead to King Billy's Knights and Night Riders. It's worth noting also here, a minor detail, the Mohawk tribe originally from New York State, so perhaps this was a nod to the fact that George was from New York and he made his way to western Pennsylvania. Again, we'll never know. Chris has the feeling of being watched by something, and the Eagles are scared away. He then goes back to his girlfriend Jill Valentine's apartment, where he attempts to explain what happened. They playfully chat, and as they roll over to make love, it cuts to Chris's ranch, where his ranch hand is attacked and ripped apart by something unseen. It then cuts again to Wesker, leader of the STARS team, getting a call from one of the shadowy government figures from the beginning that has ties to Umbrella. Wesker activates a team of soldiers.
Shadowy government figures, has that changed at all? in today's society? I don't think so.
The characters themselves are actually the characters from the game, so we see Jill and Chris as being the main characters. We have Wesker as the sort of main villain, none of which find their way into the Anderson film. And it does feel a little bit more like a game.
Jill, leader of the Stars Bravo team, leads the group into the Arclay Forest. They're attacked and aggressively torn apart by monsters we never fully see, and Jill's fate is left unclear. Wesker gives the order to evacuate all of Raccoon City, which in the script sounds more like the real-life town of Evans City, where both Night of the Living Dead and the Crazies were filmed. There's also a definite comparison to the Crazies, with a scene of soldiers pulling people out of their houses in a forced evacuation. There seems to be some subtle commentary here with Chris, an indigenous person fighting against being forced out of his home by government soldiers and the actions of a shadowy government too.
The social commentary is...
See, at least this script had layers to it.
Of course, the Umbrella Corporation
Damn.
Trusted that they created a biowarfare.
They just couldn't let him cook, man.
Was immediately.
This is from Resident Evil 3. I remember Nikolai. I think he turns out to double cross everybody. Carlos, Nikolai.
Capacity for them to have made these experiments, and
they actually put Nikolai in Resident Evil Apocalypse. It looks. I think Zach Ward was the guy that played him. He looks nothing like him in the game.
That it would absolutely be used for its worst possible way in weapons of warfare. And so I think that directly comes from the game to an extent, but I think is also part of Romero kind of, if we kind of go back and look at some of the commentary that we see in Day of the Dead, is this sort of critique of over-militarization, this sort of like melding between the military and politics and corporations to sort of have this sort of fascist theology that we see kind of emergent. And I think that he sees that this is another story to tell that ultimately when a new weapon is going to be developed, we can't really trust it not to be used for maximum harm. That it wouldn't be used in a way that's defensive, but it would be used in a way that's offensive.
They recreated that scene in Apocalypse 2 where the
I think that some of the other ways...
These are SWAT members, though, but the STARS members are mowing, at least trying to mow down zombies on the street, and they just get...
Compel the story a little bit more.
The zombies are getting the best of them at times.
It's very different. They're lovers. They don't know entirely how much they can trust about one another. So it kind of leads to this dramatic interaction between the two of them as it moves forward. But I think really it's just that Wesker is that sort of like embodies all of this critique that, he's lying to everybody. He's leading them all on a false mission just so he can monetize and ultimately exploit these weapons. And I think that kind of goes again, that people just aren't going to be able to get along with one another when needed. Rather, they're going to just further the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. Having found out Jill was a soldier and having escaped forced evacuation, Chris heads to his ranch, where he finds his horses and dogs mutilated and his ranch hand near death. Romero doesn't script on the gruesome details here, and had it been filmed, it would have been one of the most stomach-churning scenes he probably ever did due to the animal violence alone. Chris, now angered that his ranch is destroyed, his friend dead, his girlfriend a soldier, follows Wesker's helicopter as he sees flying over to the Arclay house, a ruined mansion once owned by a bootlegger that the government secretly now owns. Chris played here as a kid, and the original owner set up trapdoors and hidden passageways, tricks that help him throughout the script as he avoids danger. At the time, most of the mansion's history was only available in information released in Japan and nowhere else, so it's compelling to see George making his own backstory and his own reasons for there being traps and doors.
He took his own liberties! Come on now!
And around the Pittsburgh area, so George seemed to be trying to ground some of the game concepts into Pennsylvania history to explain the mansion sitting in the middle of the woods.
Oh my...
Wesker's second in command is Barry Burton, described as, quote, a muscular black man the size of a grizzly with the heart of a teddy, end quote. Wesker and Barry have been friends since childhood and have served together in the army for 18 years. It's unknown if making Barry African-American was a studio note, whether George kept that idea from McElroy's script, or whether it was a conscious decision by Romero himself. It does give this neat callback, though.
I really couldn't say.
And Barry seem to invoke the friendship of Roger and Peter from Dawn of the Dead. Again, I'm not sure if that was meant by George.
That would have been crazy. That's a great comparison.
Scott Reiniger and Ken Foree in those roles. Wesker's team is attacked by zombie dogs.
Scott Reiniger and Ken Foree? Like older version of them playing Wesker and Barry? Stop it.
Quote, a haunted house. A glorious ruin, once spectacular, now mysterious and threatening. The chandeliers and furnitures are covered with sheets that resist breezes from 1,000 faults in the old walls. Instinct noises echo from the ceiling.
What could have been, man? Look at that beautiful piano. That shit probably needs tune up and more.
Experiments with the T-virus for military use. The team descends into the labs. their mission to rescue Dr. Marcus. He's found already turned into a zombie, and the soldiers waste him. Wesker tells the group they now have to retrieve the vaccine. Chris, having followed and so far managed to avoid being discovered, is now caught by Wesker's team and forced to join them. They descend from level A, then to B, then C, and finally to level D, where they find a group of scientists still alive, including Ada Wong. What's interesting here is that Romero seemed to be inspired more by John's letter in the original game.
Wait.
Implied Ada might have been a scientist.
I always thought Ada, like the graphics make it look like it was long before Code Veronica. I had Code Veronica on Dreamcast. But Ada pops up in what? Resident Evil 2?
During their descent, you can feel how cramped and claustrophobic
Is this 2 or is
what?
What?
Small rooms of computers and desks, and it really does have that menacing, desperate feel that Day of the Dead had. That there's no escape.
Yeah, that scene right there.
Zombie scenes as they rip into soldiers, tearing out chunks of flesh, tearing people apart. Descriptions invoke much of the special effects work of Tom Savini and Greg Nicotero. But beyond zombies, much of the game's monsters are represented here through terrifying sequences. There are giant zombie sharks that attack the soldiers after their containment tanks burst open and the room floods with water. The giant snake snatches up Richard Aiken, much like the game, crushing his ribs and swallowing him. The enormous Plant 42 sucks out all the blood.
Plant 42, I forgot about that shit.
That make an appearance. And there's an entire group of the game's hunters that stalk the team.
Hunters? I forgot what they were called, but I forgot about them until they showed them earlier in the documentary.
The hunters are spectacular. It seems Romero combined the general characteristics of the Chimera monster from the first title with them, creating something that keeps the feel of them while visually making them more nightmarish, more terrifying.
Yeah, you know what I noticed? Have the hunters appeared in any of the Resident Evil movies?
On the page. One soldier unloads an entire magazine into a hunter's face, revealing metal plates grafted under their skin.
I want to say it was in the final chapter, but the editing won't even allow me to remember.
Throughout the script, the level of gore is both impressive and disturbing. There's a front end of a small dog with a crushed paw that's now a zombie, trying to pull itself along the ground. The zombie tries to stand up, but the
damn, PETA would have had a field day trying to boycott this fucking movie, man.
One of the soldiers, after having a chunk of his neck tore out, then eats the barrel of his own pistol in front of the team. Another soldier gets melted by a trap that sprays him with acid, while a partially melted zombie keeps attacking the group.
Damn.
Joseph Frost dies pretty much like the game, getting torn apart by zombie dogs, but with his heart ripped out through his back.
Oh my god.
Gore on every other page. By the end, the team realizes that Wesker is betraying them, and there is no cure. He needed the fire.
Why does Barry have a gun on Jill?
Retrieve the research data so that he could sell it.
I think that was the first. Yeah, that's the
Even
first game.
Even if fails to escape, a device linked to the bombs under the complex that, if his heart stops, will trigger a short countdown to a nuclear explosion.
Wow.
Wesker is stopped by his friend Barry Burton as the original game's final boss. The tyrant breaks free from his cryotube. Wesker betrays Barry and kills him. Before he can escape the lab with the data, he's skewered by the tyrant. Again, this is very much like the game. During the chaos, Brad Vickers, who is a computer techie in the script rather than team's pilot, was infected prior in the story and succumbs finally to the T-virus, turning into a zombie.
That's why they should have kept him as the fucking pilot.
Call back to the games where you could find Brad as a zombie in Resident Evil 2.
Damn!
Some additional Easter eggs were also present. The Umbrella contact in Washington was named Holden.
Leon gonna blow Brad's fucking head off and then crouch down next to his body. He's
the
going.
red and blue key cards are from the second game, and the green card was even in 1.5.
Ooh, I forgot how zombies come out of the.
The iconic spitting tiger statue is featured. So again, there's all these little things woven through
those
the
morgue storage things.
Games, even if you made conscious decisions to make the adaptation different. Also,
the freezers basically
has a lot more in common with the game.
George Romero, I'm sorry, man. This script sounds fucking amazing. Sorry, I know we'll never see it. It'll never see the light of day. But goddamn, if somebody could adapt his version.
Where the character's like, oh, I can't open that door.
I'm with it.
Well, I have the green.
I'm all for it.
Blue one, so I can get through this, which feels very much like video games. We have to wander around and go find the different colored keys or items or whatever to open different passages through the game.
There's only a handful of survivors by then. They kill the tyrant by shooting it with a rocket launcher, just like the game, and the group is picked up by their waiting chopper to fly off. They narrowly get clear of the blast radius as the labs, the forest, and all of Raccoon City is obliterated. The dialogue throughout isn't entirely terrible, but needed some attention. This was the first draft after all, and it was more focused on getting all the details in order. It's really not known what could have changed had he been allowed to continue. Surely the dialogue would have been improved, though. It's quite possible the script would have lost some of its monsters or gore scenes.
If this was the first draft, my god, imagine what we would have got when they punched up that script and perfected it.
Perhaps Raccoon City wouldn't have also been blown up, allowing for a proper adaptation of Resident Evil 2. George's script is known by his fans for changes throughout the development as he worked through the story and took notes, so we'll never know where this would have gotten to eventually. Sure, the script wasn't perfect, but not a lot of first drafts are.
Exactly.
The framework for a horror film was there, and no less the beginnings of a very unique adaptation of the games that elaborated on its material at the time, and included the social commentary that George was known for. Considering many of the films we got were bemoaned by fans and critics for being mindless actions film, it's disheartening to know that Romero was trying to show even audiences not familiar with the games that this game was something special, as much horror as action, And even if I don't agree with all the changes myself, I can appreciate what he tried to do and why he did it.
George Romero was a pioneer in his field, not just in horror movies, but in horror pop culture. Having him involved in the series so early on, I think, would have had the potential for him to leave a blueprint that could have been a massive presence in video game to movie adaptations.
Yup.
I think that a lot of times he wrote these sort of longer treatments to kind of get out of his head the story he wanted to tell, particularly with an original idea. Like, just get all this out, and then maybe start to fit it into a script form, start to think about how it can be dramatized, how you can kind of fit it into scenes and sort of do this so it's not told in the prose style. And many of his first drafts are a little rough. They're good, and usually just need that sort of that work, because I think it is just sort of he has an idea and he needs to get it out. I think with Resident Evil, there's very little substantive edits between the drafts. It's some dialogue that's fairly minor. It is, changing around a couple of scenes or sort of the progression of how something happens to, as they go between maybe one level of the lab to another. The only real significant differences is kind of about some of the foreshadowing about the BOW, bioweapons, and the Tyrant. Some of the first draft has some allusions to it that kind of foreshadow or give away what these things are, and then those are sort of omitted later to sort of, propel that there's more suspense. You don't really know what's going on. You're following the story and getting the info revealed to you as the characters are also having that information revealed to them. I mean, I think you would be surprised to find any filmmaker that writes one draft of something and then they're done with it.
A year later, website Resident Evil, A New Blood, transcribed the entirety of George Romero's October 7th draft after months of circulation within private groups. Fan reactions remained divided.
I remember reading it in a PDF format, scrolling all the pages, sitting on the computer.
That's how I'm going to read it soon as I find that bitch.
I'm thinking, this would be an amazing movie. We love the video game. We love George. George is the master of the zombies. How did we not get this?
Exactly.
Ultimately, I think it's one of the biggest missed opportunities in the last 20, 30 years of movies that we didn't get a George Romero Resident Evil movie.
Yep.
After more than 5 years since its announcement, Resident Evil, starring Mila Jovovich and Michelle Rodriguez, released in theaters on March 12, 2002, earning more than $100 million worldwide, off an estimated $30 million budget. Critical and fan reception remained mixed, however, and with each new sequel, the same question would be asked.
It remains mixed, but that money kept pouring in, so they gave us 16 more movies after that.
I went to the theater the day it released. I could not wait to see it. And I remember being like, the excitement I had kept me going through that film, but I just remember there were scenes where I was like, where's more zombies? Where is this from the games? Where's that from the games? And I was young, and I didn't understand at the time that they were trying to do a retelling of it, and I think for the most part they did a well job with the first Resident Evil movie, but there was a part of me that just was a little disappointed that we didn't get to see a lot of the things that we've seen in the games, a lot of the creatures that we've seen in the games, and I was excited, I enjoyed it, but I was a little disappointed.
But the honest damn shame was Resident Evil. We busted balls writing drafts of that screenplay. I'm talking marathons, 72 hours straight. I really wanted.
Damn, that's a George A. Romero quote right there.
Off of Night of the Living Dead. I had no legal case, but I was resentful and torn.
Damn.
Because I liked the video game. I wanted to do the film partly because I wanted to say, look here, this is how you do this shit. Romero further explained that while he seemed to connect with
George A.
producer Rob
Romero,
Pelzer,
man.
his frustrations were with Baron I. They bought the game,
people.
but I don't think they knew what it was.
It's more
the
quotes from
executive I
George.
dealt with was a young guy who was turned on to it. But the head of the company just did not understand it. Doesn't even know what a video game is.
Damn.
He wanted it to be something different. I mean, this is the guy who made Das Boot, so he wanted something prestigious. I told him, that's not the spirit of the game.
It is an extreme.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was not going to fold, man.
Romero is noted fair and unfairly for having that kind of throughout his work. I think because of the way some of the gore was employed in like Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead, it doesn't feel very gory. It feels campy almost. But there's so much more going on. Like there's a lot of great zombie gore that he had great special effects teams, of course, with Savini and Nicotero that we see this stuff. But this film just feels so much more gory, so much more violent, and so much more angry. And I don't know if it's because he felt that was the source material. I don't know if it was just sort of where he was at in his head in the 90s and at this time that he was writing that this is sort of what came out.
We said, this is easy. You take the first game, a bunch of commandos go in and shoot up the place, blah, blah, blah. With George, we could have done a great zombie movie for a very, very limited audience. We could not have shown it in a regular theater, we could not have shown it on television, and the video would have been sold in the extra.
That's bullshit!
Then you can make it
Another cop-out.
Movie, but not a big event movie. From Constantine's perspective, the
Cop-out.
extreme violence and gore in Romero's script
It's
left
ridiculous.
producers struggling how to market a film they envisioned as an event film for a wider audience.
I think this was another reason maybe that we didn't see this come to fruition, was that the 90s
You
were
cannot
fairly
tell me
conservative
that
in a lot of
fans
ways.
would not
I
have
think
showed
this would
up
have been a film that would have
opening
been rated
weekend
NC-17 or
and
R,
then some
and
to see a
had
George
few
A. Romero
NC-17
Resident
films
Evil
come
movie
out
at the
in the 90s
time.
that were
That's
absolute
ridiculous.
bombs at the box office, 'cause
That
see
makes
them.
no
Horror fans love to go see an
sense
R
to
film
me
'cause they
at
know it
all.
can be really gory. But the studios wanted kids to come in, and they wanted that demographic of 13 to 18 buying tickets.
The Resident Evil game wasn't too gory or too violent, just completely terrifying to play.
Meanwhile, they showing all the gore from the game. The game was bloody as fuck, man. Damn, it's like a compilation. It's like the Resident Evil's greatest hits, violence-wise.
To be able to be widely released in theaters with the level of gore that was going to be required for it.
If Eichinger's stance wasn't made explicitly clear, he further elaborated when he was interviewed by German digital magazine Spiegel Online when the movie released. Many will criticize the film for its unbridled lust for violence. Oh, where? I really don't think so. Virtually no blood flows. In the end, yes? But that doesn't flow. That is painted. We really paid attention because I don't like that. I don't like violent films. I beg your pardon. In Resident Evil, people are beheaded or cut into cubes by laser beams. Yes, but then it's over. It's almost weird because it's so absurd. You can just see that as a cut. Otherwise, blood does not even splash when shooting. They are already dead. Incidentally, George Romero has already said that. Romero really burst heads like melons. You can't do that anymore. Seriously.
What?
It is really important to me that I do not find this violent. I've never been in a situation where I was going to say, okay, let's do this piece of shit. I've always fought back. And that's probably what happened with Resident Evil.
Right.
I kept trying to preserve the personality I thought it should have. And what happened is that the executive was very encouraging, but by the time it got to the man, it wasn't what he wanted.
The man.
I
George A.
don't know if he
Romero,
actually
God
saw
bless
the
his
property,
soul, man.
Probably named value, because he certainly in my mind was looking in a different direction. I guess
Because these quotes that they keep saying, the quotes that pop up from him.
Mean-spirited market that is mostly controlled by people still that have no affection or affinity for not only this genre but for movies in general. They think that, you know, when they give you their million, that they're buying you.
Exactly. I guess you could say it was so upsetting.
He
that
would
you
not.
have the godfather of the zombie horror genre, the person who inspired the Resident
He's
Evil
basically
series,
like, yo, let me make my movie.
lined up to make a movie.
I know
who
you
has
want me to
already
make
proven
y'all
himself
movie, but
countless
there's a
times
reason
with
you
this
hired
film,
me in the
with
first
Resident
fucking
Evil
place.
2 trailer. This guy knew Resident Evil, so when I found out he wrote the script and it never came to be, it was very upsetting.
Leon is
I feel
all
like
of us
if
right
anybody
now.
was going to do the Resident Evil series justice, it would have been George Romero. Again, he's the godfather of the zombie horror genre.
Yep.
Romero's kind of famously had bad luck. I hate to say it. He's been unlucky in a lot of ways. He's very independently minded. He doesn't like to deal with nonsense. He has a very low tolerance for nonsense. And in the Hollywood is got a very huge, thick layer of nonsense. So the most successful directors in Hollywood are the one that can manage that. And George just was not that type of person. He would not sell his soul just to get a film done.
He understood how zombies should behave. He understood storytelling. He understood all of the fear and terror and tension that Resident Evil is known for. So no better guy to do it than George A. Romero.
So we have a treatment, a September and 2 October drafts in the archive. Whether anything else was ever written is a little hard to say, but One thing that the archive does very well is document his creative history. There are huge gaps in production histories, but his writing is very well documented. And so I think that we can say that this is what he wrote.
I think we gotta go search the Spencer Mansion to
So
go find it, I
think
guess.
that we can confidently say that he really worked on this for a little over a month.
Baron Eichinger's personal campaign against extreme violence and gore conflicted with George Romero's passion to match the tone of the video game. This creative dispute resulted in George's dismissal. Perhaps the biggest crime of all, the Resident Evil film resulted in a renaissance.
Motherfuckers even got House of the Dead 2 back there. I'm not gonna lie, I had House of the Dead 2 on Dreamcast. I love that game.
The Dead himself became less relevant.
I wasn't used to the controls. I wasn't used to first-person zombie shooters, but I like that game.
To garner attention when the industry was already
and funny enough, Paul W.S. Anderson is directing
Romero
fucking House of the Dead,
to the series he created,
which I'm actually looking forward to.
Sequel, Land of the Dead, in 2005. Romero directed 2 more entries, Diary of the Dead in 2007 and Survival of the Dead in 2009. He made many deals before and after Resident Evil. Some worked out, some didn't. For Land of the Dead, it was a big project. Big studio, big budget, big production. But there were more management layers than George preferred. More mouths to feed, more egos to feed.
Especially when you get that big studio deal, it's gonna be different than when he made Night, Dawn, and Day.
For more studio films, but George wanted to be independent. The projects we did after that gave him more control in exchange for more manageable budgets.
He was later in life a little bitter about the course that his career had taken, but personal note, I mean, I really respect his life choices and the way he really stuck to his guns.
By then, Capcom already felt zombies were a tired trope and sought to reinvigorate the series with new, horrific creatures to keep players returning. Resident Evil 4, released in 2005.
Look at Ada, man.
Praise with
and
sales
Leon.
exceeding 12 million copies worldwide. The series shifted focus to
and Matrix Wesker to dodging bullets and shit. This turned into a whole different animal at some point.
In 2017, and Village, Resident Evil 8 in 2021.
I'm not gonna lie,
Combined,
and
the 2 games sold
the later
over
games
19
look
million
insane.
copies. Capcom also
Graphics,
remade
gameplay,
older
it looks
entries in the series
insane.
with updated gameplay for modern audiences. In the past decade, Resident Evil games averaged 10 million copies sold per release. Capcom's survival horror franchise had never been
looked like the
stronger.
old guy from Left 4
Constantine
Dead.
Films released 6 films with Paul W.S. Anderson, with
sure did.
combined box office earnings over $1 billion worldwide. Constantine rebooted the film series with Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, directed by Johannes Roberts, released in 2021 to underwhelming reviews and box office.
But he understood it.
Series,
He understood that shit better than Paul W.S. Anderson. I'm sorry, and I love his movies. But
Netflix canceled
Johannes Roberts got a bad rap for that movie, and it wasn't all the way terrible.
Movies are always going to be unique in that they're based on a video game that was inherently based on movies or a genre of movies, and there's always going to be a logistical challenge and a creative challenge to replicate the kind of impact that movies and TV series aspire to have, but without any of the cliches or the shortcomings that, or the differences for that matter, that video games bring to the table. So I don't think there has been a perfect rendition of Biohazard on movie theaters or TV screens, but I'm enthusiastic that if they can find the right talent and they can see more recent examples of successful video game movies, also more recent just horror movies in general, I think if they can focus on that, we can definitely see a good Biohazard live action interpretation in our lifetime.
As the 21st century wore on,
AKA the ones y'all made ain't shit, so get it together, man.
One fact became absolutely clear. Every single one.
That was a very nice and professional way of putting it.
What do you think about these offshoots or tributes or rip-offs of the Dead movies, specifically Return of the Living Dead and, of course, now The Walking Dead?
In 4 words, it pisses me off.
I thought he enjoyed Return of the Living Dead as a spoof.
An easy idea at the time, but it changed the world. Walking Dead. I mean, there's zombie emojis on your phone now. Why? George, Jack, Russ, those 3 guys.
In 2009, Spike TV's Scream Awards honored George Romero with the Mastermind Award, given by director Quentin Tarantino. During his speech, Tarantino stated that the A in George A. Romero stood for
Genius!
Go ahead,
He was
Quentin.
someone that every time you would tell him, your movies changed my life, or your movies, you could hear the man just blush and he would say, oh, I don't know about that.
Despite his age,
Very
Romero
modest guy
remained
at
productive
times.
with attempts to adapt the novel The Zombie Autopsies to film, a seventh entry of his Living Dead series called Road of the Dead, and began work on a novel set in his universe called The Living Dead. Romero would never finish these
Road of
projects.
the Dead. I wasn't sure about that
When
one.
I saw George, this was in March of 2017, as I recall, maybe April, like somewhere in the spring. And I walked up to his table, and when I saw him, a part of my brain kind of panicked because he would look very frail, very gaunt, very frail. And I'd never seen him quite like that. And it was just, that part, it's like the guys from that movie Inside Out. One guy noticed it, and the other guys told him to shut the hell up. You're not dealing. No, don't even think about that. So I noticed it, but I went, nope, not going to think about this. Nope, not going to think about this. But he was still just as warm and engaging as ever. And we went out to dinner later that night with his wife Suze, and we were just shooting the shit about the news and politics or whatever. Hardly talked about movies at all. And then we drove him back over across the street to his hotel, and he got out, and I said, George, I'll see you around. I'll see you at the next one. And he just turned and he went, yeah, all right. And that was the last time I saw him.
I grabbed my phone and I was scrolling through Twitter, and I saw a tweet from a friend of mine that had said he had heard that George passed.
Yeah, I saw it on Facebook.
And I kind of stopped because
fucked me
in this
up,
day and
man.
age, you see that stuff.
And the fact that these people
And I
knew
kept
him
scrolling,
personally was...
And I saw another one.
That's wild, yo.
And at this point, I started to get worried. So I picked up the phone and I texted his manager, and I just remember putting, "Is it true?" And he replied, "Yeah."
I get a phone call from a friend, and she goes, "Did you hear yet?" And I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" She goes, "George Romero's dead." And I went, "No." And
damn, you can hear how hurt he is. I mean, you could hear all of them sharing their stories and how their tones have just shifted entirely. But
I saw this article and that article, and George was dead. And I sat on my bed, and I sobbed. I fucking sobbed.
Yeah.
When I heard that George
you
Romero
and
passed
the rest of the
away,
world, bruh. Like, the heart was torn out of the
Because it
world
seemed like a lot
when
of
George
the
Romero
joy,
passed away.
camaraderie, and the unity that he brought to the filmmaking community.
I mean, we could have.
and
You didn't
all
have to end it on. I know this is the ending. I know we're getting close to the end, but it's like you didn't have to end it on this note. Jesus, man, it's already depressing.
It just felt like there was going
Thinking
to be
of what
loss,
could have been,
and
but
maybe that
damn.
would just kind of. I hoped not, but I kind of thought maybe it would diminish.
On July 16th, 2017, George Andrew Romero passed away in his sleep after a battle with lung cancer. His wife, Suze Romero, and his daughter, Tina, were by his side, all while listening to the score of one of his favorite films, The Quiet Man. The outpouring of grief and loss was worldwide, not just from friends, family, and people that worked with George, but also from the wider film community.
You know,
Oh, y'all ain't about to get me. Y'all listen. Y'all not about to get me during a fucking George A. Romero Resident Evil documentary. It's not gonna happen.
I knew the horror fans.
Not gonna do it. Promise. I'm not gonna do it.
Fangoria, he was, God in Fangoria, right? But the outside world, the real filmmakers, the Academy Awards and stuff, Variety knows who George Romero is, and a big piece on George and how he was so great and talented and amazing, and it's just like, holy hell, he wasn't just George. He was George fucking Romero.
3 months after his passing, George Romero was added to the Hollywood Walk of Fame. His widow, Suze, accepted the star on his behalf, with guest speakers Edgar Wright, Greg Nicotero, and Malcolm McDowell.
Oh, he loved Edgar Wright, man.
You wake up the
He
next
gave
day,
him and Simon Pegg a
and
cameo in Shaun of the
start
Dead.
thinking,
I mean, in Land of the Dead. They
Alright.
were in Shaun of the Dead.
He's
Well,
not here. What do we do?
Edgar Wright
George was
directed
always
it.
Here. George
Simon Pegg was in it. Y'all know what the fuck
always
I'm
going to
saying.
give an interview, or he was going to be at the next show.
But I think, I can appreciate that he got a posthumous star on the Walk of Fame. But he should have gotten
Romero
that.
founded the George A.
He should have gotten that long
Foundation
before his
the
death,
following
to be
year,
honest.
citing a responsibility to not only preserve George's legacy, but also celebrate pioneers in the film industry and inspire a new generation of filmmakers.
That's right.
The way she tells it is that, like, sort of on, as he was beginning to fade, toward the end of his life, she said to him, how do you feel? How do you feel about your legacy and the films that you've made, this body of work? And he said, nobody gives a shit. She said, what are you talking about? You have millions of people that love you and your movies. He says, yeah, but I guess he didn't really feel validated as a filmmaker, you know. Suzanne was determined, after he passed, to prove him wrong. She said, I'm just going to show you that you are, in fact, a worthy filmmaker, worthy of being remembered. Of course, he made his mark on
What a
movie
woman
history, but he never felt validated as a real filmmaker, even though the stories were kind
To
of...
even in the last few
He and
years or
Scorsese
moments of
had
his
been
life
writing
to
the
just
same print of Tales of
breathe
Autumn,
life,
and-
to keep breathing life into
Some
that
kid from
man like
Brooklyn
that.
printed it out. The kid from Brooklyn said, who the hell's got this now? Some
I'm-
kid from the Bronx rented
Y'all
it.
not about to
Never
get me to
met,
cry at the
but
end
they
of
were
this
renting
shit, I
the same
promise.
movies as our band.
And I think they do a lot of great work of trying to help figure out how to inspire the next generation of filmmakers.
As an initiative to preserve George's work, the George A. Romero Archives was created at the Hillman Library within the University of Pittsburgh.
I was about to say, is that the
Romero
monkey from
Archive
Monkey Shines?
is quite large, a little over 100 boxes of material, and most of this is paper. So when you think about boxes of paper, that's a lot of material. It's really a testament of his creative history. He did struggle, and that wasn't always successful. And I don't think that that's a critique. I think that that's instructive. That he is considered one of the greatest horror filmmakers of all time. He's had this massive of influence. You know, he's always hailed as, you know, among these, you know, biggest directors, most important directors in horror, and yet he didn't get everything he ever wanted made.
True.
And I think that's good for aspiring writers and filmmakers to understand and to see that just because you wrote something and you sent it off and it got rejected doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. You'll just have to keep trying.
And hosted at the Monroeville Mall, where Dawn of the Dead was filmed nearly 50 years ago, Living Dead Weekend honors the work and legacy of zombie cinema, primarily the films of George Romero. Each year, thousands travel to the mall to meet the cast and crew of his films, partake in guest panels, and tour filming locations. On July 4th, 2021, the Monroeville Mall held a special ceremony in what was once the Clock Tower Court and renamed it Romero Court, with a bust crafted by Christian Stevens.
Nice.
George A. Romero's
That's fire,
legacy
yo.
continues to live on.
That is
through a
fire.
foundation that honors his legacy, through millions of fans that celebrate his work, and through those that still love and miss him.
George's films literally changed the face of horror as we know it.
Yes.
Romero is a legend. We miss him. What he did for zombies, for horror, and for film in general, he'll never be forgotten.
There's so much more that he wanted to tell us. There's so many more stories, that he was so creative and so prolific. We can have this understanding of him now, and it's a shame that in some ways we couldn't have understood this while he was still alive.
Exactly.
I really wish I had had the chance to work with him.
He was a great loss to the filmmaking community and to the world in general.
The Resident Evil series exists because of him. My love for this series, all the friends I've made, is all because of him.
I would not be the man I am if it wasn't for George Romero. I ran over and got him to sign an autograph for my brother Tom. I remember he wrote, "To Tom, when there's no more room in hell, I'll see you in Pittsburgh."
I don't know where my life.
Not
would
gonna
be
do
right
it.
now
I promise y'all I'm not gonna do it.
Romero.
It sparked a lot of people's love of him to be turned back up, and we have so much stuff going on in George's world now. I wish he was here to see it.
What he did was bring all of those people from all of those films into one big family. And all of the fans.
He sure did.
All around that are all part of that group too. So that is his legacy. It's not just the films that he made that are on a shelf or being watched at a particular time. It's that interconnection between all the people that he touched in his life.
I just want to thank everybody again. It's great to be here, and thanks particularly to the fans. I mean, I love you guys.
Look at how much love he got. He didn't even know what to say. Oh, not the slow motion wave goodbye. Y'all not gonna get me. I fucking swear. Y'all not gonna make me cry. Y'all ain't gonna do it. Is this the end? Are we at the end? Are the credits about to roll? What is this? Is this the end? Or is that guy's creepy voice going to pop up again? Oh no, it's Wesker 2.0. He's not even a STARS member. He's just got like military stuff on. Well, he survived the night. He's leaving the Spencer mansion, so is he going to get attacked by something on his way out? Please let like one of the hunters just jump off the tree and grab him or some shit. I don't think we'll get that lucky.
It's fabulous. You know, I love making the movies, and it's great that there's a game which is like a flashback to that genre. And it's, you know, I
look
can
at the OG PlayStation right there.
A little bit like I had some influence on it. I feel very flattered.
You hear the clock ticking in the background from Resident Evil. Oh, directed by Brandon Salisbury. Great fucking job, man. Oh my good. Listen. Let's just skip all the pleasantries, people. We are 2 hours into this fucking commentary for this documentary. If y'all have rocked out this entire time, I appreciate y'all. This was okay. Let me just say this. This is a 10 out of 10 documentary, man. This is one of the most informative, and I watch documentaries all the time. Especially if it's a horror documentary, count me in, man. I'm fresh off of Tom Savini's Smoke and Mirrors documentary. That was amazing. Listen, I was very nervous to get into this. And like I said, it was going to be bittersweet because I knew it was going to be things that were going to be uncovered about this movie that never saw the light of day, that were going to make me sad, that were going to make me happy, that were going to get me excited. It's like I said, it's the biggest what could have been in the history of like horror, man. And there's been a lot of them, trust me. But this is a 10 out of 10, man. As a George A. Romero fan, as a zombie fan, as a horror fan, as a somewhat fan of the Resident Evil games. Like I said, I checked out at Code Veronica, but this shit is definitely making me want to watch or go back and play a lot of the games that I skipped out on. Go back and watch a few of the George A. Romero movies I missed out on. Maybe go back. I mean, I'm still in the process of finishing commentary for the Resident Evil series. I think the last one I got to do is the final chapter. I'm not looking forward to that. But this is a 10 out of 10, man. Let me just say this. There isn't a single thing that I could possibly say about George A. Romero that these people that put this documentary together haven't already said. I'm going to sound like a broken record. I'm going to sound really repetitive. So everything is understood. Everything that they said, they knew this guy personally. I did not. They said that they hit a lot of the same beats that I did in the opening of this episode, man. So I'll leave that where it's at. As far as the Resident Evil movie from George A. Romero that never saw the light of day, how fucking stupid do y'all feel, man? Listen, $1 billion franchise? Absolutely. Big shout out to Constantine and Screen Gems and Paul W.S. Anderson. Alexander Witt did the second one. Russell Mulcahy did the third one. Johannes Roberts did the reboot. Shout out to all of them for being a part of that. And even the Netflix series that got terrible reviews. Shout out to everybody that was a part of it. But the shit that he was going to do and bring to this series, the nerve of y'all to fire this man because he didn't want to conform to your little studio rules and do what everybody wanted him to do. You knew who the fuck you were hiring in the first place. Like, all right, let's get that. This is a man who made Night of the Living Dead. And the moment they finished the movie, they heard on the radio that Martin Luther King had been assassinated. And when they were shopping the movie around to like producers and studios, they would roll with it, but they wanted him to change his ending. This was a guy who stood so firm, 10 toes down, that he's like, I'm not changing his ending. You change the ending, you change the whole trajectory of the film. And that to me is one of the things that made George A. Romero amazing. It's one of the things that kind of didn't work in his favor because he didn't get along with the mainstream, Hollywood industry and things like that. But the fact that he was just so militant about shit, man, I think that was amazing. So The fact that y'all had somebody who understood the games and you fired him just because he wouldn't do what y'all said he you know, there's a tagline here that says he would not sell his soul just to get a film done. And he didn't do that for Resident Evil. He didn't do that with any of his films, to be honest. But the shit that he was going to do in Resident Evil, yeah, he took some liberties. A lot of people would be like, nowadays, with this fake ass cancel culture and this woke culture, and people don't even know what the fuck that word means. There's a lot of people who would have been like, oh, Chris Redfield wasn't Native American, Barry Burton wasn't black. Oh, this is woke, and this is da 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 da. Like, honestly, in every sense of the word, if there was a film director and writer who was woke, it was George A. Romero. He's putting social commentary in every single movie that he's doing. Not every single movie as far as I know, but like his Night of Living Dead films. Come on now. There's even some social commentary in Night Riders, for God's sakes, man. If there's one guy who was woke for all the right reasons, you know, for the people that can understand what that term can actually mean when you're not misusing it all over the fucking internet like people do nowadays, it was him. So if anybody was the guy for the job and to put some social relevance on Resident Evil in a modern day spin on screen, or the first one we could have gotten, it was him. You know, he included the STARS members. Yeah, he switched it around, but he included so much from the games and the creatures. Yeah, a lot of the STARS members get slaughtered in it, but it's still the shit that they're describing, man. I can get past it. And I think the more George A. Romero's movies, the zombie movies, went along, the dialogue isn't as strong. So if I could survive the dialogue in Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead, I'm pretty sure I could have survived the early drafts worth of dialogue for a Resident Evil movie, man. It's not like Resident Evil was a game that was known for its super amazing lines from the characters, man. No, it wasn't that. I think if the story was strong enough, the characters can pretty much write themselves at some point, man. Listen, that's just me. That is just me, man. But instead, you know, y'all fired him, but you hired a guy who, like, listen, I'm saying this in comparison, yo. I love the Resident Evil franchise. The movies, it's my favorite guilty pleasure series, man, next to the Tremors franchise. I promise y'all. I love those fucking movies. The final chapter is ass, but the movie looks great, and they do a lot of cool shit in there. But I love the franchise as just to turn my brain off and enjoy it for the action, enjoy it for the horror, enjoy it for the violence, the characters when they pop up on screen looking exactly how they did from the game, whether it's Ada, Leon, Barry, whatever the case may be, man, Wesker. I love those movies as guilty pleasures. But you hired, in place of George A. Romero, you hired somebody who did, George A. Romero placed shit inside of that Resident Evil script, but I feel like with what he was doing, it kind of made more sense. But instead, you fired him and you hired Paul W.S. Anderson, who later on in the later sequels, he goes on to bring in elements of the game that aren't even fucking earned. Like, and I say that because the 60-foot liquor pops up out of nowhere. The Nazi zombies with machine guns and motorcycles pop up out of nowhere. The assimilation pops up out of nowhere. The Las Plagas zombies pop up out of nowhere. The all the shit that you see sprinkled and just placed in the movies later on, they're not earned. They just pop up out of nowhere. But as I get, if you're a guilty pleasure fan like me, you roll with it because it's a video game movie, and it's like, well, with 3 movies in, 4 movies, 5, 6 movies in now, I'm not just going to start nitpicking at this point. But I feel like it made more sense. Everything was more in context. The characters seemed a little more layered than the characters in the game. Or not in the game, but in the movie, man. Like in the Paul W.S. Anderson series, man. Those characters pop up out of nowhere. You don't get backstories for those characters. You don't get none of that shit, man. You get, oh, I was an Olympic diver and I'm in Resident Evil Afterlife and I get killed off like nothing. There's no character development at all. So I can get past a couple race swaps and, a bunch of murders and gore and shit happening if we get some developed characters and things are pretty much contained with, like, oh, what have y'all done, man? This is insane, man. This is one of the reasons why I love that fans petitioned so hard to get the Snyder Cut released. Because when you let the director cook, amazing things can happen, man. And this is just another example of them not appreciating the genius that was George A. Romero, with the pen behind the camera. I think this is one of the craziest missed opportunities, man. And the fact that y'all almost made me cry at the end of the documentary, fuck y'all for that. But this was amazing watch, man. This was really great. If you guys, like, listening to me do it is one thing, or listening to me watch it and talk through it is one thing, and I did not talk as much as I normally do on these commentaries because I didn't want to miss really important keynotes, man, more than I already did. But I think I got the bulk of what was and what wasn't, what could have been, what should have been, what would have been. As far as a George A. Romero Resident Evil movie, man, it is insane, man. It makes me curious as to what's going to happen with this movie franchise now. I feel like now that this documentary's dropped, whoever does the next Resident Evil movie needs to pay close fucking attention to this documentary and use it as homework. Use it as the do's and don'ts. Then watch the Paul W.S. Anderson movies. Use it as the do's and don'ts. Watch Johannes Roberts reboot. Use it as the do's and don'ts. Netflix series. Use it as the do's and don'ts. I feel like this should definitely be a template. You know, use whoever makes Resident Evil next. Use this as the template, the study guide. The same way that if you're going to do a zombie movie, you might want to watch Night of the Living Dead and use that as a template for what made the zombie genre and what made it special and things like that, man. This was such an amazing watch, man. And I like, it was a lot of shit that they talked about for, you know, as far as the Resident Evil 2 commercial that he directed that I didn't know. I didn't know that was Brad Renfro that was doing Leon Kennedy in that commercial, man. I forgot the name of the actress that was playing Claire Redfield, but I love that him making that commercial was all the incentive they needed to be like, okay, this guy gets it and he can understand what it takes to do a Resident Evil movie. But God, oh man, you know what we need next, people? Doesn't have to do anything with zombies, but it's still horror related. We need you know, a documentary on what John Carl Buechler was originally intending to do with Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. And then we need one for David Ayer and his Suicide Squad. Then we need one for Joe Chappelle and Halloween 6. All of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, man. We need it. We need a documentary for Tom Savini, what he wanted to do with the Night of the Living Dead movie. But the difference is, all of these movies saw the light of day. You know, it's not like this movie here, man. We'll never get to see it. We'll never get to see it, man. At least those movies, there's like work print versions, or there's pictures to see from production and videos, or pictures that hit scenes that hit the cutting room floor, things of that nature. Even John Carl Buechler's version of, you know, his uncut version of Friday the 13th Part 7, there's not a full version because they burned all the reels. Fuck you, Paramount, for doing that. But there are work print clips for the uncut death scenes in that movie. Same thing with Tom Savini's Night of the Living Dead, man. There's work print clips of all the extra gore that was cut out because the MPAA were a bunch of pussies, you know, when it came time to cut that film down to size, man. But this was 10 out of 10, man. I've been talking y'all heads off long enough, man. Y'all already know where to go, man. And if y'all don't, y'all can follow the podcast on Spotify and wherever else you get your podcast from. Shout out to Spotify for creators. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, Romero Tutor. Listen, somebody told me TikTok is gone, down for the count. So if it is, y'all know the other platforms to follow me on. Facebook and Instagram, man. Romero Tutor. Shout out to the Facebook movie group, the Cinemaniacs. And last but certainly not least, shout out to the Tutor reviewers, the listeners, lovers, supporters out there. Damn, this is one I'm gonna have to watch again. I might watch it again tonight, like once I settle in and everything like that. But this left a mark on my heart, man. Rest in peace. Shout out to George A. Romero, the late great George A. Romero. Thank you for the inspiration, man. Thank you for you know, me finding the calling. Thank you for the nightmares, the memories, the nostalgia. And honestly, I was making my list last night. I was redoing my list for the 87th time, and I got all my movies I got to catch up on from 2020 to 2024. I got that list. I got all my unseen movies on my commentary watch list. I got all the classic movies I've seen, but I want to do for y'all on my list. And to the ones that I've seen and haven't seen, I have to add the George A. Romero movies I missed. I have to add Bruiser to my list now. Never seen it. Have to add Monkey Shines. Never seen it. I don't want to see it, but who knows? Maybe I'll like it. I've seen Martin like once when I was a kid, so I got to add that to like the second time watch or second chance watch commentaries, man. I think those might be the only ones. I'm not sure, but and yeah, I got to finish up. I was making another list of the franchises I got to finish, and I think I've done Night, Dawn, Day, Land. I gotta do Diary of the Dead. Not really looking forward to that. And I gotta do Survival of the Dead, which makes Diary of the Dead look pretty Oscar worthy, man. And again, it's no disrespect to George A. Romero, but I am a fan enough to know when the films could have been better, and I'm just not a big fan of those last two movies. But I am appreciative of the fact that he stuck with. I mean, him and Wes Craven definitely tampered with other things that tap danced on other genres. But I think for the most part, George A. Romero, like when he stuck with zombies, he stuck with zombies, man. And whether people love or hate the movies, he is the zombie granddaddy for forever, man. So again, rest in peace. Shout out to George A. Romero. The world misses you. I think the world needs you at this point in time, man. Very interested to see what they do with Twilight of the Dead. Brad Anderson, the guy that did The Machinist, is going to be directing that. I know George A. Romero's daughter, Tina Romero, has got. I know it's like it's I can't remember the name of it, but it's like a drag queen version of Night of the Living Dead, and I was like, this is a pretty interesting take on it. I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm the target audience for it. I don't think so, but I said, how crazy would it be if that movie turned out to be something insane, man? I don't know, but there's so many different, there's two different Night of the Living Dead films still in the works. There's like a direct sequel to Night of the Living Dead in the works. There was supposed to be a reboot with Vivica Fox playing the main role, like the female Ben, basically. I know a lot of woke culture is going to bitch about that. Well, Ben is, you can't gender swap Ben. But if anybody bitches about the lead being a black woman as opposed to a black man in a Night of the Living Dead reboot, then I want to hear y'all complain the same way y'all did when Ben was a white guy on a motorcycle in Night of the Living Dead 3D. Because that shit was ass. No disrespect to George A. Romero, but and it's no diss to him because he didn't have anything to do with it. Night of the Living Dead is open domain, so anybody can make a reboot or a sequel to it. But that Night of the Living Dead 3D shit, man. Recipe shout out to Sid Haig, but that movie is awful. And when you first see Ben, he holds out a 3D fist and socks a zombie and saves Barbara, and he gets her on the back of the motorcycle, and he's just a regular guy who's just completely terrible in the film. He's a terrible actor. That movie's garbage. But again, recipe shout out to the GOAT because his original Night of the Living Dead still stands the test of time, people. That's all I gotta say, man. And y'all already know the love and support y'all show me, I show it back to y'all tenfold and then some. So with that being said, people, yours truly, Romero Tutor. Another episode of Tutor Reviews in the can. I'll check y'all on the next one.